3:01, we'll go ahead and get started and call this meeting to order. Recording. Great. Wonderful. We have 6 of us in attendance today. So the full committee at this point. We have Colleen McQuaid joining us virtually on the camera. Colleen, you can hear us?
I can hear you.
Wonderful, thank you.
Can you hear her?
Dan is going to pass out some materials.
I think everybody has an agenda and a hard copy. If not, let me know. I got lots of extras here.
Great, thank you. Our first agenda item is a review of the November 1st, 2024 minutes. For the purposes of discussion, do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second? Great. Any discussion on those minutes? Changes, corrections? No. Okay, great. All in favor of approving the minutes from November 1st?
I don't know if I can. I wasn't in attendance, so I can't.
You can abstain.
Yeah.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Colleen?
I think I'm gonna abstain too. I mean, because I wasn't here.
Yeah, that's great. The ayes have it. We'll accept the minutes without any corrections. Great. Our second agenda item, public comment. We do have 2 additional public comments that came in through the form. I'll read them as is our routine. The first is from Clark Adams. Clark says, I feel the policy of allowing individuals to be reappointed to boards and commissions without appearing before the select board for reconsideration is incorrect. Every individual seeking appointment to a public board or commission should be vetted by the select board by being interviewed and presenting why they should be reappointed.
Who is that from?
Clark Adams.
Clark Adams from the Select Board.
Yes. So I think this comment probably finds a good home in our governance group.
That's what I was afraid you'd say.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
Do you know what he's speaking in reference to? Is there anything particular he's speaking in reference to?
I think, yeah, that's a good question. You're asking like if there's like a particular appointment that he's referring to?
Yes.
I don't know. It doesn't say so in this comment. His comment is more general in nature.
Well, can I ask a question to Stu and Dan?
Yeah, the current practice is not to interview those who are seeking reappointment, who have served a long time, but to interview only those who are new appointments or new members seeking appointment.
So if somebody is already on a board, and then they have, say, a 3-year term, and they're at the end of that 3-year term, and they say, I'd like to serve another term,
Right.
the select board doesn't necessarily re-interview them.
But they do have to re-select them.
Yes.
Okay. Right.
Another question. I appreciate the spirit, I think, of his suggestion for sure. How many, if terms are a couple years, does the length of term depend on the board? I'm assuming
It does, yeah.
It does.
3, some are 4.
3 or 4. And then do we
2,
have a
3, 4,
sense
1.
of how many folks this would pertain to? I'm worried about an undue burden if all of a sudden the select board now has to factor in 24 interviews to people who have already served, like on their present agenda. If it applies to like everyone on the energy, you know what I mean? Like I just don't have a sense of how.
It would generally be no more than 3 or 4 members of each committee depending on the terms, because the terms are
Right,
staggered. So
It just seems like such a minor issue that the select board can decide whether they want to do that or
Well, I
not.
mean, that was my thought, right? Is
Right.
like,
Elevating
if the
it to a
select
charter
board wants to re-interview them, they already have
Well, that's
that.
why I asked.
Because this is
if
a
you-
policy that they have now.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
so it would be a policy change regardless, right? I
Right.
mean, that would, that's how I would see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
But it goes to you.
yeah.
And it
What
is
did they
inconsistent. In the past, they have
What did they
interviewed
say?
people that are reapplying.
No,
They have.
So is he asking for us to consider that for a charter change? Or is he asking in general as a select board to take it up? I guess that's where I'm confused, because it wasn't, at least for my first auditory pass through there, I didn't.
Well, it says, I feel the policy, so he's expressing a feeling.
Yep.
About a policy.
But I guess my assumption is that if this comment came to us, he's looking for this to be a charter change. He's looking for the select board to be mandated to have to re-interview everyone, and taking away from the select board the ability to just reappoint them without an interview.
Again, my perspective is I appreciate, like, I agree with, like, the spirit of, like, we need to be on top of and thoughtful about every opportunity to renew anyone's term, but mandating it, I worry, is too much of a restriction on the agenda and time and bandwidth of. It was same. I think I brought up the same point around the mandatory listening sessions. I think it's a great idea, but mandating it when people already have. The select board people already have 24 regular meetings and they don't get paid basically anything. I just felt like that was unfair to them. Clearly he doesn't, he's a select board member, so he's enthusiastic about this extra burden on himself and the committee, which I think is great. I mean, like, I appreciate that, but I think it's an undue burden on to institutionalize that requirement personally. But
I also think in some situations it could just be maybe a little silly, right? Like somebody on like the development review board that like you have to have like specific qualifications to sit on that board, and like if that's the only person that reapplies, like then you're gonna have to re-interview the one person that reapplied for the position they've already served. Like, it just seems like there's some situations where it could have really no benefit at all.
Yeah, I'm just in the position, if they wanted to now, they could do it.
They can interview, yeah, right.
yeah, that flexibility.
So, I'll wait till we get to lessons learned.
Okay. For now, let's refer this to the governance group to draft a response to this comment for our final report. Great. The second public comment that we had come in is from Carolee Gully. Carolee says, Vermont made national news in early 2023 when the Vermont legislature approved Brattleboro's teen voting charter change. Today, the national age of majority is 18 years. Children go through developmental periods of growth unique to each individual. Teen children are learning, experimenting, and experiencing new things every day. They are accessible to influence. Parents are responsible for 16 and 17-year-olds' housing, food, clothing, education, healthcare, medical treatment. Children have special privacy rights and different treatment in criminal matters. Early teens should not be allowed to vote on a town budget, a town representative, a town policy, plan, or a town charter. These teens should not sit on the select board making decisions on town business and town departments. These young people often lack reasoning, skills, judgment, savvy, and capital. No minor need be voting for what he or she cannot be responsible for under the law. So, again, I think this comment finds a nice home with the voting group. I think it echoes a lot of the sentiments that we've heard from other folks that have submitted comments. Any other thoughts on this?
I think there was a similar comment that came in not that long ago that sounded like this. And I would tell you the same thing I said then, that there's some adults that would fit in that category. Forget about 16 and 17-year-olds. So, you know, I don't, why I understand, but I feel like it's biased. You know, that there's a lot of studies that show just the opposite. So, anyway, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would echo that. I mean, there's certainly some pieces of this that I can appreciate. There's other pieces of this, such as lacking capital,
Yeah.
that I feel are just really anathema to the right to vote in this country.
Right.
But yeah, again, we'll ask the voting group to draft a response to this for a final report. I'll open up for just a minute for any members of the public in attendance to also comment. But before we do that, I thought maybe it was worth having a brief discussion around the comment form on our site, and if we want to consider directing Jonah to disable that at this point. We're sort of at the very end of our process. Won't really have time to triage any additional comments that come in and respond in any sort of well reasoned way.
Do we want to, like, I understand what you're saying and I agree with it, but would we want to maybe give some notice? Like, instead of just stopping it? Because I feel like we haven't said it at any point, like that you had to have them in by a certain date. So maybe if we...
I don't know,
But it
we're
looks
having
like-
public comments next week, right? A public hearing.
I imagine we will. We have the forum on Wednesday.
Right.
So maybe we could also announce at that forum that
That's
like
kinda
at
where I was-
midnight
Yes.
on Wednesday or something will be like the last opportunity to submit that form. I don't know how that works with Jonah and so we might have then a handful to discuss next Friday. But
That's,
yeah.
I'm comfortable with that.
You know, you can always say they can still submit comments to the select board. It's just this committee won't be able to consider and respond to them.
Mhm.
So they can still fill out the select board comment form, but there won't be one explicit to you guys.
Right.
That's,
Right.
that's good.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's a good...
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
And also, just a note, which just confirms what we just said, but the press release was in today's paper and it does give the link. So I would like to, obviously let people...
Like, I gotcha.
All right, close comments. Was that going to be 11:14 at midnight? Great. Last piece for our public comment section. Are there members of the public in attendance that would like to share with us?
Yes. I just wanted to chat a bit about automatic mail-in ballots because I see it was on your final draft summary report. And I don't think we really discussed it with the subcommittee, and if we did, it was only very briefly touched on. It's interesting that this came across my desk this morning because I was actually drafting an email to our legislative delegation to talk to them about the nightmare that is automatic mail-in balloting that we just got through this week.
Oh, okay. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, so, well, first and foremost, I think that the statute regarding mail-in balloting for local elections says that it's a vote of the select board.
Okay.
So I don't know that it's necessarily
Oh.
something that has to be determined in this committee.
Okay.
Technically, the select board already has that authority to make that determination. And if it were something that you guys did pursue, I noticed that it says enrollment of all registered voters. And if you do decide to proceed with it, I think that it should say all active voters.
Okay.
That's currently what state statute is for the general election. And just to put it in perspective for you, right now I have 10,640 voters, but about 8,000 of them are active voters. 2,000 of them haven't voted. They may have moved away years ago, and with the laws regarding how I remove someone from the voter checklist, they may sit in that challenged status for 6 years before I can remove them if they don't tell me otherwise.
Okay.
So, we can't forward ballots, so that would be a waste for those 2,000 people. Let's see. Second, if it were to come to fruition, I know I did discuss with the subcommittee about how 17-year-olds, 16-year-olds, it would only be for local elections. That would also be the case if you decided to do automatic mail-in balloting. It would only be for town meeting. It would not be for MAU, SVU, or the tech. So, come the first Tuesday in March, that's going to cause a tremendous amount of confusion for all of those voters that are getting a town meeting ballot, and that's only a quarter of what we will be voting on that day. Let's see. Yeah, so that would cause a lot of confusion.
Kathy, how do you keep track of that? So if for some reason this was voted in, you sent a ballot to me and I voted and dropped it in the mail, and then I realized, oh geez, I want to vote in the school election too. And I show up and I vote, I'm already checked off on the checklist, right?
So, logistically, I haven't thought that far ahead.
Okay, so this could be an absolute
This was
nightmare.
on my desk this morning, you know?
Okay.
So yeah, we might have to have multiple checklists, meaning more poll workers.
Wow. Okay.
And, you know, like one of the things we experienced on election day this week with the automatic mail-in balloting is, I don't know if, you know, I don't think it was fraud by any means, but there were several people who used, I don't know if any of you went in person, but we had a quick drop box so that if you had your mail-in ballot and it was all done, ready to go, you didn't want to wait in line, you just dumped it in there, we dealt with it afterwards. But we had to deal with that before the close of the polls, and we had to go through, there were a couple hundred ballots in there, and we had to go to the checklists and make sure that it wasn't someone that came in during the day. In fact, we had 3 or 4 people that came in and voted in person, yet we also had this early ballot for them. So we had to mark that as defective so the person wasn't voting twice.
Right.
You know, stuff like that you guys would have no idea about logistically, that is just a nightmare on election day. So yeah, I mean, right now it's by request. And one of the things that's nice about by request is in the winter with March town meeting, a lot of people winter in Florida or Arizona. And if we use the address that's on their voter profile, it's not going to get to them because ballots do not forward. We're not going to have those temporary addresses. So yeah, I feel like having it by request the way it is now, I've really, in my 10 years as clerk, I've really encouraged people, hey, just give us a call in January, we will put you in for the full calendar year, whatever elections come up. And that's worked well. I've trained people to do that. And quite frankly, we really haven't seen that it has increased voter participation for these general elections. I looked at the numbers yesterday, and percentage-wise, for a presidential election, we are at about 70%, and that has been consistent since like '08, since I've been keeping track. So, and in fact, this week, so less than half of the people that received mail-in ballots used them, and that is down probably 25% since 4 years ago.
So 4 years ago, about 75% used them?
No,
It's down
we're less
25%
than, yeah,
from that.
we're less than half this year. So it was higher, it was, let's see, it was a little over half of the people used it 4 years ago.
Okay.
So we're seeing less and less. People like to go to the polls.
Sure. Yeah.
Let's see, what else do I have to mention here? I guess just ultimately, it's, to put it bluntly, it's just an untenable strain on my office with 10,000 voters. I mean, we would not be able to do it, the two of us. It would have to be hired out by a company. I mean, I'm sure that's what the Secretary of State's office does anyway. But then, of course, when the ballots are coming back to us, we do have to deal with that. And the last 6 weeks, you know, we're getting hundreds of ballots a day. There's 2 of us. And the land records recordings, the birth certificate requests, none of that stops for 6 weeks. You know, we still have those other day-to-day tasks.
Sure.
So it's just between state guidelines, federal guidelines, there's just more and more and more being piled on the two of us for such a small office with we're like the 6th largest town in Vermont. So it's just become, we're just overwhelmed.
Sure.
Could I get your opinion on whether or not you getting more support in your office, do you feel that that is beneficial to this topic?
So the trouble with that is on an off election year, when there's only one election during the year, Kayla and I are fine, just the two of us with our workload. The last 6 weeks have been awful.
Right.
And we're coming up on one of those odd numbered years where we won't have to worry about state elections. So it's not like we need to bring in another full-timer. And while I do rely on my Board of Civil Authority, they would be happy to come in and help do tasks during those 6 weeks. The things that are the toughest are like on election day, for instance, you know, when we registered 228 voters on election day. We try to go in and do that live on our database while a person is registering. And if we can't do that, which we couldn't from 4 to 5:30 or 6 o'clock when it was a rush, you know, we just did the paper form, sent them to the checklist. What happens with that is, that person, we find out today when we're entering participation that the person actually is registered. They're under a different name or they're at a different address, and now we have a duplicate voter registration that we have to sort out. And that's something that only Kayla and I can do. We are the only ones that can access that statewide voter checklist. You know, we can't have a BCA member doing that. And it's a lot to train anyway. So yeah, I mean, I thought about that, like if I could bring in other staff. Kayla and I were just discussing it this morning, but there are certain things that only we can do with our years of knowledge. So yeah, I mean, I guess ultimately why I'm here is to tell you that we are overwhelmed. I don't see that it is increasing voter turnout. And there's just logistically, you know, as I've spoken to the subcommittee, there's a lot that you don't see and that could trip us up.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the select board already has that
Right.
authority,
Yeah.
so there's
Yeah.
no need for a charter change. Okay.
Other than to potentially mandate it.
Right. But I mean, it's not like they don't have that authority.
Right.
now.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for.
Any questions from anyone?
Well,
I know from the subcommittee, I know that it's a lot.
sure.
I've got land records requests that I'll send to you later.
Well, we stacked that up from Monday to Thursday.
Are you salary? You get overtime?
I am salary.
Well, then maybe
Charter
that's what you
change.
change.
I have a couple questions myself, and then I'm happy to open this up as well. Knowing that maybe you haven't had a lot of time to prepare to speak on this issue, do you have any sense of like what the cost wrapped up in the mail-in ballots would be?
I would have no idea because again, we'd have to hire an outside company to do that.
Okay. And was that how? So it wasn't handled like in the town for this past national election?
The state does it for us.
The state does it?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe a little unrelated, but just because I'm curious. What happens with, like what kind of follow-up happens with the 3 individuals that submitted 2 ballots this week?
So they were not counted. Again, I don't think it's any sort of fraud happening. I think it's a person not understanding what they had in their hand versus, and I didn't open the ballot, so maybe it was blank. But what was important to me was I saw on the checklist from that day that they went through that line, got checked in, and obviously would have been given a ballot to vote on.
Right.
So the envelopes that I had, we marked as defective. Just in case there's a recount, which is not handled by my office, it's done by the county clerk. We write on everything. If something was not counted, we explain why. So I noted defective, voter came in person on election day and cast a ballot in person.
Okay.
And you did your job and found that, and that's part
Yeah.
of, you know what I mean? And that's reassuring to me at least.
And that's noted like with their individual voter record. So like if
It's
it happens
not-
like again.
It's not on their voter record.
Okay.
It's just I've kept that envelope with their name on it, and it's in the basement with everything else that I have to keep for 22 months.
Okay. The third question I had, since you're here and we're potentially talking about the other voting changes, is if you'd be willing to answer questions on that as well.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Anyone else?
I have a question. Okay, you mentioned, or you talked a little bit about the by request. How do people find out that they can request?
So,
Is there any place where that's like on our on the website or anything?
Oh yeah, definitely. And so I've been clerk for 10 years now. My predecessor, you know, he knew everyone in town, and he was a little bit more lax about it. He was just like, oh, this guy, he votes absentee every year. He's going to want a ballot. I was a little bit more strict. I'm like, well, you know, we're supposed to have a request, but we can take it for the full calendar year. So my first couple of years, what I did was I had a list of all the voters I knew regularly voted absentee, but I wanted to do it by the book and make them put in that request every year. So I actually called those people in January and said, hey, you know, I put a little spin on it. I'm like, yes, the laws have recently changed and you have to request them each calendar year. Would you like one this year? And that's when I started saying, just remember, you know, put it on your calendar for January 1st next year, give us a call. And now everybody does it. People start calling right around the first of the year. It's amazing. And it's usually like 200 or 300 regular people every year that they just like to do it that way. And again, you know, a lot of people winter somewhere else in the winter, so it's just that for that one election that I have to use that address. So
Is that done through the DMV as well when we register? Because I did receive mail-in ballot, which was awesome, but I don't remember signing up for it unless it was something I did through the DMV, so I was just curious.
you can register to vote at DMV, but there's not an absentee request. The general election, the one that we just had, and midterms as well. Any November election, which is every other year in Vermont, it is now state law that all active voters are sent
Oh, okay.
a ballot. So that's why you would have received, like, you're an active voter, you're on the list, the state sent it to you.
But the state manages that whole process. No.
How many weeks typically before an election can you do drop-in early voting here at the clerk?
State and federal elections ballots need to be available 45 days ahead of time for military and overseas voters. Local elections, I think that's 20 or 21.
Okay.
Anything else?
Folks have other questions for Cassie, either on mail-in voting or on our other proposed voting changes?
I guess maybe for just clarification in regards to the whole, confusion potentially of ballots. So it's possible that a 16 or 17-year-old who wants to vote would come in and there'd be like a pile of, non-16, 17-year-olds, and you get one ballot that has access to all municipal elections. The 16 and 17-year-olds would get access to just a specific town meeting
Right.
election. So there would be two sets of ballots there.
Like right now, we print our town meeting ballot with the tech on the other side, just for cost-saving measures.
Right.
So we would have to print those separately.
Correct.
And then, so the 16 and 17-year-olds would only get that town meeting ballot. And then you, who I believe is over 18,
I just turned 18 today. I appreciate that,
would
Cassie.
get the
Thank you.
town and the separate tech, and then we would
Why are you looking at me
still
like
be
that?
able to print the MAU and the elementary front to back like we do, but yeah.
Gotcha. I couldn't pass
I
for
guess
18, Drew?
one-
Is that what you're trying to say?
one
Is that your first
comment-
credit card?
And I haven't dug into the
doesn't get any
recommendations
pizza.
around voting is for subcommittees, for properties. When we met with Paul and his team, they had similar concerns. Like, if you want us to really enact this ordinance or expand upon it, it's just not feasible. And so currently in the draft for that subcommittee, I took his recommendation for a part-time person at 45,000, you know what I mean? And that I hope will be in our final report. So regardless of how sort of things that shake out, I'd like to invite you, if there's something like that you'd like to have live in this as a recommendation, not for the charter, but just allow us to pass it on to advocate for you and your team for, you know, money for a contractor, part-time consultant, or, you know, any sort of resource things. I think we'd be happy to consider that and put it in there. Just a plug for you to plug if you want. So.
Just an opinion question. If you, because you said before that there has been very little difference in the voting out, you know, the turnout. Do you think adding 1670 is going to make any difference?
Well,
in
I'm
the
sure
end?
there will be a few. I mean, I think you guys had numbers from Brattleboro. It was like, what, 20?
Minimal.
20,
Yeah,
yeah.
very minimal.
I mean, what I've seen for the 17-year-olds that are eligible for the presidential primary, it has turned out to be nothing. Like, I haven't seen, none of them have voted. I think
You mean
we
the
had-
ones that could that are 17?
Right, yeah.
You know,
I think
okay.
we had like 7 or 8 back in March that were eligible, and none of them voted. Obviously, that number would be a little bit higher if you were opening it up to 16-year-olds.
This is just kind of a thought that occurred to me as we were talking about this, is that if you opened it up to 16 and 17-year-olds, and, you know, we would have, you know, what they're available to vote on, there would have to be some way to track, like, their birth date, so that it would trigger that they get a different, because you don't
Well,
re-register to vote then when you turn 18, because you're already registered to
Right.
vote as a 16 or 17-year-old, so then if you know, from one year to the next when you become 18 and now you can vote at other things.
So I spoke to the
That's a weird
subcommittee
thing.
about that.
Yeah.
I don't think that I use a statewide voter checklist, you know, a database that's created by the state, and I don't think it has the capacity to do that. Although I know that I can add 17-year-olds. I don't know about 16-year-olds, because it does, I've got, like, on my dashboard, you know, it says, okay, 10,000 whatever registered voters, then it has my active, then it has my challenged, then it has not 18. And that's how I know that I had 7 or whatever it was in March. And so I can click on that field and I can look at those names. So a few days before the election, when I print my voter checklist, I will go through and find those names. And it's got like a little code that says not 18, N18, I think. And I highlight that so that my poll workers will see, okay, that person's not 18, so they're only eligible for the presidential primary.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know how it would work. with
And so there's
16-year-olds.
currently separate ballots for when that happens?
Correct.
And
A
the-
presidential primary ballot is entirely, that's something
Is-
that the state provides because it's a
Is it
separate-
possible then that we would have to oversee, when I say we, the town would have to oversee just the 16 and 17-year-old town municipal registrations, but the state is already going to kick them into the system when they become of age anyway?
Well, it would probably be like you were saying, is like if I can't enter them into the statewide database, then I have to kind of look back and say, oh, this 16-year-old is now 18, I can add them to the statewide database.
We had heard in some of our conversations that there was talk of a new system that would accommodate some of these additional populations, 16, 17-year-olds, non-citizen residents. But we had trouble finding any information about like when that might actually be coming. Do you have any more information on like what in the works means? Yeah.
Am I able? I'm good, right?
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Didn't mean to interrupt. Last I heard, I think they were talking about maybe after this coming town meeting, so spring. You know, the
Oh, okay.
the problem with it is, I'm sure that the Secretary of State's office is already working on development. However, launching it with 250 town clerks, we can't be doing that, 3 weeks before a presidential election.
Yeah,
Sure,
yeah,
sure,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
So that we have time to work out the bugs, learn the system. So I think the intent was after town meeting, because next year we are supposed to have basically the whole year off after town meeting. No summer, fall elections
Right.
scheduled. So that way we would have time to play with it, learn it.
Okay, but so like in 2025 it
I
sounds
think
like.
so.
Okay,
Last I heard.
okay. In terms of just like your feeling about, assuming for a minute that these additional populations pass the select board and the town voters and the legislature, it sounds like that new system will be available before Bennington would actually be implementing those new populations. Does that make it feel more manageable to you to do that? Or do you
Well, it's nice to know that there will be a way to track that, because otherwise, I have no idea.
Yeah.
It's a mystery.
Sure. Okay. That's
Are there, like-
very helpful. Thank you.
There are opportunities for people like yourself to connect with other clerk. You do like a conference or
Oh, yeah.
anything every year.
Yep.
I feel like that knowledge transfer
Mhm.
too is like
And
just really
it's
helpful.
actually really, it's beneficial because like, there are so many tips and tricks that, the things that we do, the end goal, we all have like different ways of getting there.
Mhm.
So it's nice to be able to bounce ideas.
Right. Because one thing I found, again, I we'll be voting and everything, but like it is reassuring to me, like Brattleboro's doing something, like or on the voting one, I guess there's more precedent in other towns, and bigger towns than Bennington too, Burlington, Montpelier's not bigger, but yeah, I'm curious. We had a basic understanding from calls we had with those clerks, but I mean, I feel like you would have understood it a lot better than us,
All right, I'm done.
Cassie, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
You don't want to
Later
stay
on your desk late.
Sounds good, but I have a
you
massage
can-
booked at 4.
Okay,
so.
all right.
You deserve it. I hope you have a great weekend.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for everything you
Cassie,
do.
we'll be contacting you on your feedback about Dan and Stu.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye. It's like a tough.
Yeah.
It's a hard job.
Great. I'm so grateful she came. That was really, really helpful.
Yeah, it was.
I'm just mad at you for your reaction to me trying to pass as 18. That hurts. It hurts the gray hair on my face.
Actually, I was going to offer you up to do the absentee ballot hand delivering in Arizona and Florida.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you this. In Arizona, we're widely scrutinized and, national news, and mail-in voting is the majority of what voters do, and by party, the majority of party voting, that was passed by a Republican legislature. Majority of Republican voters vote. Very close is Democrat. I mean, it's even by party. It's razor thin. Everybody does it. It's widely popular, especially with elderly communities. Given the, there were years where you'd wait 10 hours in line in 100+ degree heat to vote. People were passing out. So
That's true. Yeah.
now we don't have to worry about that here, but for me, it's an option. I do see merit to the fact that we can request a ballot right now, and why would you spend thousands or whatever the money is, even if it's $1, why would you spend that wasted for people that don't want it, historically never use it, when it could be as simple as saving it and saying, if you want it, you have access to it. Do this. So,
You could also, I'm not saying this is a good idea or a bad idea, but there, you could also say you send out a postcard to every registered voter saying if you request, you can request mail-in, so that people, because I did hear a lot of people screaming at the clerks out there about, why did you send me a ballot? I don't want a ballot. And it was like, they're like, we didn't send them to you.
but a lot of that too is just the political climate that we're in now as well. You know, and I saw that firsthand, you know, back in AZ, and then there was no there. So,
Yeah.
And to me, I feel like across so many of these topics, it's like, can we do it? The logistics and cost, and then sort of like a communications, like social behavior change dynamic or space. That's like, you know,
Well,
like maybe the solution lays there more than somewhere else.
change is the
or
key
not.
word there, though, too. Is like,
So-
you know, everybody is resistant to change
Absolutely.
in some form, right? So while this is not what we have done, that, you know, that's part of towns progressing and things changing, and you know, you didn't used to be able to, you know, couldn't do mail-in ballots. You know, you didn't have scanners. Everything was, you know, so things change, and you know, ultimately it's not our call. It's just we can take it to the select board, and the select board can take it to the people, and that's the process.
But it would be interesting, even as a select board, you know, before you you roll out what the charter committee, or any committee, but the charter committee has to see if it's even can be done.
Yeah,
I mean, we could be recommending something that can't promise 100% accuracy on.
no, we found that out in our own research.
Yeah.
You know, in a lot of ways, it was like, well, you know, here's the impediment to this, but also an impediment isn't a final answer. You know,
Right.
Especially with voting, we should do everything we can to expand voting access versus deny it. You know, so.
Right.
But there's always also going to be people who complain about everything. So
Well, I appreciate like the resourcing thing.
Yeah.
Like we need to make sure that Cassie and her colleague can do their jobs really well
Yeah.
and not be so stretched. But if the solution's just like a, you know, a consultant for, you know, 30 an hour for 2 weeks, like that's
well, like you said,
pretty reasonable.
Brattleboro's doing it.
Yeah,
The-
yeah.
Maryland,
so,
you know, other places are doing it. So there's a way to do it.
yeah.
Well, they're expanding the population, you know, and certainly there's a lot of places that are doing mail-in ballots. But I think one of the things that Cassie said that really holds a lot of water for me is this idea that folks would get a ballot for town elections that doesn't include the school races, and then they would many of them would likely, it would not occur to them that they have to separately go to the polls to vote in the school elections. And so it would make that process quite confusing for the voters to remember that they have to vote like in 2 different places
This is for mail-in or for the 16 and 17?
for the mail-in.
Mail-in.
So if we did mail-in ballots, like automated mail-in ballots for town elections, then folks, because remember, town elections don't include school board elections, 'cause
Right.
that's outside of Bennington, right? And so folks would then get a ballot with the town races, select board, in the mail, but it would not include any of the school races. And so then the people would just have to understand, oh, I still have to go to the polls to vote in the school races. And so for me, that actually feels like it would be
step
disenfranchising a lot of
Step
voters
backwards.
just
They have
through
to do it
confusion
twice.
and stuff. Yeah. So that was something she brought up that really swayed me to change my mind on that. Okay. Anything else on public comment? Great. I think it was worth spending some extra time on that because I think moving into the recommendations, actually, that brings a lot of clarity to a few of the things that we'll be talking about. So that was really excellent. I think what I'd like to do is just approach each of these one by one. I've given you all a heads up that we're actually voting for real on these things today.
It's not a drill.
Not a gel. Colleen, are you still with us?
I'm still here.
Great, great. All right, so the first recommendation I have listed here is a charter change to lower the voting age for municipal elections to include 16 and 17-year-olds. Do I hear a motion to approve that that charter change being placed on the town ballot? For the purposes of discussion, do I hear a
Yes,
motion?
I will.
Thank you. And a second. Thank you. Discussion on this proposed charter change appearing on the town ballot.
So, what Cassie just said about the new system being in place, after the town meeting, actually made me feel better about this possibility, thinking that by the time this would be, put into effect, that there could actually be a way that would make it easier for her and her team and all clerks, really, that are doing this work already, to include 16 and 17-year-olds. I mean, that was actually, that helped me think through my decision a lot. I thought it was like years out. I mean, I thought it was like further out.
The only comment I'll have on this is, there's been a lot of comments, and I appreciate everyone, whether I personally agree with them or not. I think the dialogue is what makes all of this important to do. But from a personal standpoint, I still go back to, we've got 17, 8-year-olds dying on battlefields. We've got 16-year-old single parents, 16-year-old parents. We got kids being abused, going through different life, experiences than other 16-year-olds or 17-year-olds. So all that to say, to generalize 16 and 17-year-olds as easily manipulated without the mental capacity of adults, no shot at my personal friends, but I've got some friends that are in their 40s that I would compare to 16-year-olds every once in a while. We all have our moments, right? So I just don't. Their future is important, and not allowing them to dictate their future by the time they are 18, just because we're putting a mandate on 18, as if 18 versus 17 is such a significant, marker, which maybe in some cases it is. I just personally, I want to empower the youth of this town and everywhere to understand that, we get to define what this town and this future and the country we want. Instead of keeping those voices, muddled, there's uneducated voters now that are adults. There's people who don't follow politics who still vote. There's people who don't know the system of government who vote. There's people who have mental issues, health issues. Go down the line, right? They all get to vote. People with dementia could vote. There's nothing stopping that. So I'm just not hung up on the 16 and 17-year-old, like they're disqualified simply because of their age. I think it's a generalization that is just not in the interests of fairness and inclusivity. And I do believe that per our town charter's mission statement that they have every right to a quality of life that I do as a 40-year-old taxpayer. If they're out there working and making money and contributing to society, then I'd be proud to have any 16 and 17-year-old having their voice heard to make the town better.
Thank you. Other thoughts, perspectives, debate?
You just said you were 40. No,
19.
I have gone back and forth on this issue a lot, and again, I appreciate everybody's comments. I think that I could probably personally live with a 17-year-old voting. 16, I think, is too young, and I'm not comparing myself because then I would say it was definitely too young. but it was. But I don't know. I could see 17-year-olds being able to vote. I cannot see 16. That's kind of where I am.
Okay. Are you proposing that as an amendment to the motion on the floor?
Yes.
Okay. the second on that amendment? Okay. The motion stands as originally moved. Thoughts?
I've also gone back and forth on this. This is actually the hardest one for me, I think. And yeah, I thought about like logistics, and it was reassuring to hear Cassie's perspective. I think the argument about we define, for me, there's some sort of conflict between knowing like criminal, prosecution type things to health, those sorts of other elements that sort of define what an adult is in other spaces, but being reminded by Michael's words of like, we have the opportunity to define in Bennington what a full-fledged member of our community is powerful to me and makes me want to lower it. And recognizing that I think our country is moving to a place where more and more teenagers are forced to become parents. That they, there's parts of the U.S. where people are forced to become teenage parents, and we can't even let them vote. Sort of related to the same sort of argument of like military. Like if we're gonna have this be a reality that our society tolerates and allows, then I'm in favor of it. I think in the end, knowing that I want also the voters to have that opportunity to decide for themselves. But I've really gone back and forth. I do think there's sort of but if we're dropping it to 17, I'm just like, all right, let's do it. I don't know.
To your point though, you brought up, I think, just to clarify my own position, I support bringing this to the voters and the select board. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm at. Is I want the voters of the town. So hopefully the select board will hear that through my vote. Is that I want the voters to decide, and if the voters decide that that's not what they want, then the town has spoken, and I'm okay with that. But I don't want to not bring this to the select board for a vote, just off of that.
Also, on the logistics side, I am reassured that there's precedent. In Brattleboro, it's it's not a lot, but that does mean something to me too. That we wouldn't be the first. It's already gone to the legislature once.
Thank you. Colleen, do you have a perspective on this you'd like to share?
My thoughts are kind of similar to what they was just expressed about. I think that this, personally, for me, I did go back and forth, but I am in favor of it going to a vote with the select board and the town. I think that, really the decision lies with them, and they should get the chance to vote on it. And I really like that the system would be in place by this, before this would even ever come into effect. That makes me feel a lot more comfortable too. That's trackable.
Yeah, thank you, Colleen. I can really only echo what I've heard others say. I feel similarly. The sticking point for me as we were considering this was really like the lack of a good system to manage this. Not only the lack of a good system to manage this, but understanding that it is the state election management system that performs some of that voter eligibility verification. Like knowing that will be in place when this goes through, I think really moves the needle for me. On a more maybe emotional side of it, I just think of this committee and how we've put a lot of emphasis, we've spent a lot of time welcoming a wide diversity of opinions as we've considered the things that potentially will do in this town. And I can only feel like that same spirit of welcoming as wide a diversity of opinions on many town matters, on voting, is a way that I'd feel really good about moving forward. So, not to belabor this, because I think we're largely have consensus on this. move the question. If you are in favor of
Wait,
having...
can I ask a
Oh,
question?
sure.
Can we abstain from any of these?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Just procedurally.
You might get a funny look from people.
I'm fine with
You don't
that.
get a slice of
No
pizza.
pizza. Okay.
Well, I get that now.
Would all in favor of placing a charter amendment to lower the voting age for municipal elections to include 16 and 17-year-olds on the town ballot, say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I would think about abstaining, except when Dan said that. But I would say that based on the fact that bring it to the voters, then I would also approve of that. I think that that's a good point.
So you're in favor?
Yes.
Okay,
Placing it on the ballot.
great.
Yeah, can I just clarify, so like, our job is to bring these questions and determine whether or not it should be brought to the select board. Our job is not to vote as an overriding, this is a charter change because of us.
And you know what? That's kind of where my when you said it when you both said it that way, it kind of changed it's really not, we're not making that decision.
We're not
Let
making
them-
that decision, that's
But
correct.
we are making a recommendation.
100%.
and
Okay, I just want to be
100%.
clear on saying that.
Well,
too,
100%.
is that
Let's put it this way,
we're not passing the buck.
no.
We're making a recommendation.
I will officially amend my original thoughts and tell you that I would want it to go on, for the voter, on a ballot for the voters to decide.
Okay.
That I have no objection to.
Okay.
And then you can.
So-
vote on it.
So again, please, order, please. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it.
You took down my tower I was hiding behind.
Okay, the second item for us to vote on, I think if we want to start distributing this too, I think
I
that's...
think we're just moving it.
Okay. The second item we'll vote on is a recommendation to be placed on the town ballot to allow legal residents of Bennington who are not U.S. citizens to vote in municipal elections. For the purposes of discussion, does someone want to make that motion? Michael,
I'll
thank you.
second
Second, thank you. Discussion on this motion. I think it's substantially similar to the last one. Different population, so certainly there's room for some different discussion there. I'll give another minute in case anyone wants to share a perspective on this.
Yeah, I just want to make clear that my stance on it is that this is an opportunity for this town to recognize the members of the community that stand among us different, but it's for us to decide whether or not we recognize them as equal. They're here working, they're here legally, they're contributing to the community, they have families, there are issues of town matters that impact their family, their finances, their futures. So that is the question, as I see it, that's being posed, is do we as fellow residents of Bennington recognize these non-US citizens who are here legally and in many cases have been vetted tremendously? Do we recognize them as equal residents here in this town with the same rights to their voices being heard on town matters? So that is how I see the question.
Thank you.
I think for me, yeah, it is very similar. I think I approached this one, in September or so with a really open mind, and as I learned more and more, I only became more and more convinced of being in favor, more than the youth one, honestly. And I think too, what was helpful is learning about the experiences of other towns in Vermont, and that there is significant precedence for it. I mean, more than the other one and some other issues. And nationwide too, there's more precedence. And once I think we came to a common understanding of definitions and what we were talking about, I think that also allowed us to feel more clarity and reassurance. I think, as we know in this draft of this section, there's a lot of sort of like misinterpretation of certain terms, resident, legal, stuff like that. But once, I think there was a moment maybe a few weeks ago where we sort of like clarified that, I felt like that was a point where I was like, right, and so yes for me.
Thank you.
The law also helped clarify things for me as well, to know that the U.S. Constitution and federal law allows for the states and the towns to make these decisions themselves legally, and that, as Carolyn pointed out, there is precedent. And then our talk with legal counsel. Again, I found myself in the same position going, personally, I feel that this is another question that should be asked of the members of the town, and then the town can decide how they feel about it.
Others?
Nope, I had strong feelings about this. I think that through the fact-finding and subcommittee work and the attorney, that I'm in the same place as I was on the other issue. Bring it to the town, a ballot to vote.
Right. All in favor of recommending to be placed on the town ballot a charter change to allow legal residents of Bennington who are not U.S. citizens to vote in municipal elections, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Okay. Next proposal is a recommendation that the town place on an upcoming ballot that all active voters in municipal elections be automatically enrolled to receive an absentee ballot.
So moved.
You move?
Yeah.
I'll second.
Second, thank you. Discussion on this motion.
I guess Cassie's insights made me feel now that I'm less confident, and maybe I should abstain to do maybe a little more like due diligence around like the current powers of the select board, at least. So I don't know. And your point about I don't even know how to describe it.
Yeah.
Getting a ballot in the mail for something but still having to go in for another type of election at the same time is, I think that we're positive that's the case.
Yes.
Okay, well
Yeah.
then I wouldn't feel comfortable voting on that fact alone, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm just comfortable with the fact that we already have the choice to do it.
And we're positive of that too.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, well then that was okay.
I guess I would also just say, as the person who originally submitted this as a public comment on the form on our site, that what Cassie shared really swayed me, and the last thing that I would want to be responsible for is making the process of voting sort of more convoluted or more prone to error for voters. So even though I was the one that originally sort of put this on our radar. I don't think I would be in favor of this today.
I'm with you on that too. I feel like after listening to Cassie, I'm no longer in favor of this as well, because I think that it would cause people to not vote for certain things, and I never want to be responsible for that. Right? So I agree with you.
I would want this sort of discussion though we've had in the insights to be like the lessons learned or somewhere, because it came up, a few times, and I was excited about it because I have a friend who's part of this effort in Montpelier that has bipartisan support, so that's why I was excited about it too initially. So.
Right, and I thought that it would be something that would trigger people to vote, so especially those who maybe become eligible to vote through this process, like non-US citizens who live here, getting a ballot would be like, oh, I'm allowed to vote, I should go vote. But of course, if that just makes it more confusing for them, then that's not really serving that purpose. But so yeah, I've kind of gone back and forth and now feel like I've landed on the negative side.
Others? Great. Call the question here. All in favor of this motion, say aye. All opposed, say nay.
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 Any abstentions? The motion is defeated.
I'll be right back. Just go on to the
Sure. If Drew's stepping out, do we want to maybe take 5 minutes to allow him a break? Maybe
Yeah.
hand out pizza?
Cool.
Sure.
Okay. We'll take a 5-minute recess.
Yep.
Sure, thank you. We'll come back to order
Like I ate all
at 4:13. Colleen, just double checking you're still with us.
I'm here. We just asking if I was here.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
The next proposal we have to consider is a proposal to place on the town ballot as a charter change, elevating the town's priority of code violation liens to the same status as tax and water sewage liens. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
So moved.
A second?
That's it.
Great. Discussion on this motion.
I want to just acknowledge some context that I put into the report that I welcome feedback on.
It was very good.
Oh,
I read it.
thanks. I think we'd be remiss not to acknowledge the likely perspective of the legislature on this topic. So this is, I don't know what page it's on, but I put, the committee notes that the state legislature may not prefer to have this change be at the municipal level, so as to standardize lending and lien procedures. However, the committee feels strongly that this topic is a practical step forward and wishes to prioritize this amendment to maximize the possibility for it to be considered before the legislature and action to be taken in Bennington or maybe statewide. So I guess I just want to make sure that everyone's comfortable with that. We could workshop it. It's sort of like a similar but different sort of like principle, I think, that we might hold is like, not only do we want to bring this to the voters, but there might be certain things that we just feel are so important and practical to be brought along the like deciding chain or whatever. So I just wanted to make sure that was front of people's minds.
Sure. And if you don't mind, when I read through this, one of the pieces that swayed me some was the idea that for tax violations, water sewage liens, like those already have priority in the town, right?
Right.
So there is like some precedent for this type of thing, and there, even in Bennington, like that's already the case for some types of liens.
Statewide statute.
That's statewide. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And I think we also could be, I mean, I feel strongly about this topic and housing in Bennington and Vermont, but I think we'd also be remiss not to bring this to the legislature, because they could very easily be like, good idea, statewide. And like, if that were to happen, I would be so proud of what that could accomplish for the entire state. So anyway, it's sort of like a sort of funny like angle at an opportunity that makes me in favor of this change, given the process and deciding factors and stuff.
Yeah, I definitely, I mean, there's going to be challenges with this, but, you know, one of the comments I had made early on was, you know, for us not to be afraid to lead from the front. And I feel like this particular topic, it's very clear that this would be very positively impactful to not only our town, but potentially every town that has to deal with these kind of situations. And it could benefit us financially. It could benefit us with providing more opportunity to potential homeowners, and it provides us with an opportunity to provide a real sense of accountability to those who, you know, allow the buildings to go into that kind of situation. So to kind of piggyback off of Carolyn, like, yeah, this is one that, yes, I'm aware that there's going to be challenges, but this is a real opportunity for us to lead from the front and make a statement and say, you know, at least bring it to the voters and say, you know, hey, if you want to get something done on this, this is kind of swinging for the fence, but maybe that's what this takes.
Yeah.
And just to clarify that, that when we're saying bringing it to the legislature, the state legislature, like, it has to go through those hurdles of the voters,
Yep.
the select board, and then the voters,
Yeah.
right? There's no way to, if it gets vetoed by the select board, say the state legislature will never even see our recommendation. Is that correct? I mean, I'm just
Not necessarily.
No.
I mean, if in fact you convince enough people that this is something that even if it's not acceptable to the folks in Bennington, you could still, as a charter review committee or a committee of citizens of Bennington, contact your local legislative delegation and pursue it through the legislature.
okay. Thank you.
Well, and also, am I wrong to assume that the banner will be providing some sort of record of what we are proposing to the select board?
I mean, that's
You
up
can
to the
assume
banner,
that.
but I think it's likely
Some-
that there
some
will be
sort of
some
media,
reporting
yeah,
on, yeah.
It is conceivable the select board says, you know what, let's not put this on the ballot, let's go talk to our state legislators and try to figure this out. And that's, but you're still bringing the topic to the fore.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I appreciate your efforts on this, because the properties that are most persistently problematic, almost all of them have some aspect of this issue, you know, retarding our efforts to move
Sort of tied
forward.
up, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear other perspectives, particularly anyone that is leaning against this. Any perspectives at all? Okay, then we will call the question. All in favor of recommending for placement on a town ballot, elevating the town's priority of code violation liens to the same status as tax and water sewage liens, say aye.
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 Can you speak up?
Kidding.
Any opposed?
Totally forgot.
Any abstentions? The ayes have it. The motion carries. The next proposal is that we recommend for placement on the town ballot, adding to section 103-511A5 of the current town charter, a 1% tax on non-owner occupied short-term rentals. It was unclear to me if we leaned in favor of non-owner occupied or just any short-term rentals. I think both have been discussed. For the purposes of discussion, do I hear a motion for non-owner occupied short-term rentals?
So moved.
I'll second. That's fine.
Great. I guess to kickstart the discussion, is non-owner occupied the direction that folks generally think they're in favor of, or should this be for all short-term rentals?
Everyone understand what non-owner occupied means?
It's a good question.
So it's just differentiating that with short-term rentals, there can be rentals that you have as like your second home that you rent out on Airbnb for the weekends. Or you can also rent out a single room in your house, and that person shares your kitchen with you, and sort of acknowledging there's sort of differences and the utility of space and efficiency and resources and stuff.
Yeah, if you have like an in-law suite in your backyard, that's an owner-occupied.
Oh, it is. That's what I was just gonna ask.
Yeah.
That question. Or like if your house is a duplex, and half of it, is that one considered? I'm just curious.
I believe that's still owner-occupied.
So that's going to be really, really hard to define. I would thought you guys were leaning towards like homestead properties versus non-homestead properties, which the tax department really, you either file your homestead exemption or you don't. Defining what non-owner occupied means is probably important, and also important to figure out how we would be able to enforce that.
Yeah.
Because if it's just like, oh, this is a homestead property, that's easy. But beyond that, who's going to decide and make the decision and collect the data to decide whether or not it's non-owner occupied? So that would be only my caution.
I see.
Yeah, I will say I ran out of time to fit like building out this part of the report, and I don't know if it's an option to postpone the vote for more discussion, because I don't think this topic got enough discussion from us necessarily, but there is precedent for this in the state. There are definitions, and I would say, to Dan's concern, and what I think is sort of started to build out in the report, that something like this type of can of worms would have to be complemented by resources and expansion of an ordinance or something else that helps define that. There is a recommendation for the town to create a registry, and so it would be sort of like a suite of things to be able to get at, like a realistic, functional lot, if the select board ever vote, if it ever passed. Again, this would just be an option in the charter for it. So
Yeah.
that's that. I don't know.
Well, and short-term rentals, there's also like a specific like legal definition of what that is, right? Like being rented for like 14 days or fewer, like within a certain period of time or whatever. Like basically it's targeting places that are not used as long-term rentals, that someone's renting month to month. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And I guess it's good to clarify that this is not necessarily recommending that the town implement this options tax.
Yep.
This is recommending that the town be given the option to implement a tax in this way.
It's another mechanism to hold, let's say, absentee owners accountable for disrepair and
the various other topics that we've talked about. It's just one other mechanism.
Just their overall impact on the housing supply in this area.
Right.
Yeah.
So it gives the town the ability to implement that. So.
And potential revenue. And there's, a paragraph here under the town level recommendations around the benefits of a registry too, which I think in a short-term registry and a local options house together can help on a lot of different sides, including, safety, accountability, fair regulation, revenue for the town, and impact on the overall housing supply.
Yeah, I'm not hung up on the wording of non-owner occupied in terms of like not being able to vote on the actual topic.
Yeah.
I think we can wordsmith that part to make it more clear, but in terms of what I'm clear on what I'm voting on, if we were to do a vote today as opposed to waiting, because I feel like that's actually potentially more of a burden than just.
That's fair.
Yeah. I think that you've put in the report. I've seen it myself that Winooski, perhaps others, but Winooski for sure, has done the work of separating out and defining what owner occupied, non-owner occupied is. And,
it's a hot topic, obviously.
And I guess for me the other piece on this is that the town does already have sort of a charter grant that allows an options tax on rooms, right? Which would include short-term rentals. But what this really does is it allows the town to sort of more narrowly target that tax at a specific subset of that's having perhaps a more detrimental impact on the housing supply in this area.
Yes. Correct.
Other questions or discussion on this?
Just a minute.
Sure.
Sorry, I just want to look at the charter for a second.
I mean, also just anticipating some of the other discussion that could come out of it is that the state already has something sort of similar, I think at 3%. But again, going back to what we discussed, it's but we can let the voters decide if they want something more. That's, I think, completely reasonable.
Yeah.
Another 1%. I'm anticipating that, but it's I also don't want to make that call for anybody else. So if we amend this, I mean, I'm happy we could specify non-voter occupied, we could leave it, we could take it out to leave it more broad, or we could put in parentheses, owner occupied and or non, I don't have strong feelings as long as we leave it flexible for the select board's, decision.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Sorry, and so just so I'm clear, I just wanted to pull this up so I could ask this correctly. So, under the local options tax, we're just proposing a fourth item being listed. Is that
Yes,
right?
correct.
Okay. We're not replacing rooms.
Well, a fifth item?
A fourth.
A fifth.
No,
No, and she's talking about the actual charter. It would be the fourth option.
No, it would be the fifth.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Mine printed the same way.
The same. Oh, it's printed backwards. Okay.
But yes,
Thank you.
it's not
I don't know.
replacing anything, it's not
replacing,
amending
that's
things,
what I was
it's
gonna
say.
additional.
It's not replacing the rooms tax. It's an additional one. Sorry.
Correct.
Yeah, this page is should be flipped around anyway. Okay. Thanks.
Well, so the motion on the floor is on non-owner occupied short-term rentals. Does someone feel strongly about amending the motion to change that?
My opinion, can I just throw it out there, is to
please.
keep the non-owner occupied in what we're voting on. I feel less comfortable voting on this without that language in there.
Yeah, me too, actually, yeah. That's my
Thank you, yeah.
preference.
Yeah. All right, great. Other discussion on this? Hearing none. All in favor of recommending to be placed on an upcoming town ballot that we add 103-511A5, a 1% tax on non-owner occupied short-term rentals, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. The motion carries.
Jackie, just one note on this particular recommendation and the next one.
Yeah.
We all know what they mean, but I think when this report goes live, we'd want to
Flesh it
put some
out
more
a little.
context in it.
Like in the,
Because
in the
the
summary.
first three, it's really, or four, it's really clear what you mean.
Mhm.
But this here is like, we have to go back to the charter
Yeah.
and see what it says, and it's just that, it just gives the select board the option to put it on the ballot. I think it just, otherwise, it's a great executive summary, but I think that, that'd be just a little add a sentence.
Yeah.
So people understand they don't have to look through the rest of the document to understand what this recommendation is.
Yeah.
But the other ones they're concise and clear, and this is those two, they're not as expansive, they don't explain the whole deal.
Heard.
Yeah.
Heard. Yep. Our next proposal is for a charter change to be placed on the town ballot to amend section 103-406A to include the phrase unless modified by contract.
I'll second.
A motion, great. So as we've discussed before, but for the purpose of anyone listening at home, this was the discussion to give the select board additional latitude when hiring a town manager, to either stay with the sort of status quo, which is that's an at-will employment situation where the town manager can be dismissed without cause on 90 days notice. This proposal would give the select board additional latitude to have an employment contract with the town manager that changes those terms.
It gives them clear authority. Right now, our attorney says they probably have it, but if it's in the charter, then they definitely have it.
Right. Discussion on this motion?
I'm against it. No, I'm kidding.
Well,
I want to hear
No,
what
no,
you're
I
going
think-
to
you know-
I think going back to the world, the distorted world I live in, and being involved in boards and governance, employment contracts are normal. I think at the time that if the town manager, if the select board wanted to, could offer an agreement as an enticement. Doesn't have to be 5 years. It could be a 2-year. It involves a negotiation between a potential new town manager and the select board. As far as and if they have that option to do that, based on what's happening at the time, I think it is certainly more normal than not in the corporate world to have an employment agreement.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Drew. Other discussion on this? Hearing none. Would all those in favor of a proposal to place on the town ballot an amendment to section 103-406A to include the phrase unless modified by contract, raise your hand, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? The ayes have it, the motion carries. Last one, last proposal we have. A proposal to be placed on the town ballot, a charter change that would authorize the town to delegate to a civilian oversight board authority to receive and investigate all incidents of alleged ill treatment or misconduct that come to the attention of the board. Do I hear a motion for the purpose of discussion?
I'll move that.
Second. Mike, great, thank you. Suppose I'll share a little on this first. Happy to do that. So this language was largely pulled from S.75 at the state level. It's a more narrow in scope than S.75, which included quite a number of additional powers, such as the authority to create or dismiss an entire police department, right? Say we don't need to have one of those anymore. Like there were some things in there that just clearly were outside of the spirit of the discussions that we've had. So it's in here. Hopefully everyone had a chance to look at it. But I basically narrowed it down to the point of granting the select board authority to create a town board that has the authority to look at some confidential records that the police department has in the course of investigating a complaint of misconduct. The records would be kept confidential, so they would not become public record just because the town board looks at those, but it would give them the right to look at those records, that body camera footage, to interview officers, things like that. What I've put in here does not give them any ability to impose discipline. That would stay with the chief of police. It would be limited to a town board receiving a complaint, investigating that complaint, and then making a recommendation on what sort of follow-up from a civilian perspective they think would be appropriate.
So I just want to get a little more specific.
Mm-hmm.
What if the alleged misconduct did not go to the select board? What if it went just to the police department?
So there are several categories of allegations that they would have the ability to look at. So it lists all grievances and complaints filed by members of the public against a law enforcement agency within its jurisdiction, all complaints of unprofessional conduct, all incidents in which a law enforcement officer acting within the officer's scope of authority uses physical force upon another person that results in death or serious bodily injury, all incidents that result in an officer-involved death, and all incidents of alleged ill treatment or misconduct that come to the attention of the board, regardless of whether those cases are the subject of any specific formal complaint or grievance. So this would allow a town board to receive concerns, allegations directly from the public through the select board or through the police department's formal complaint process.
Okay, I'm just a little hazy on how that actually happens.
Mm-hmm.
And
Currently, or
just how this would, how does the select board get involved in a complaint going forward? Not today, but I mean, if something, even any of these categories,
mm-hmm.
if it doesn't go, if it's not received by the select board,
Mm-hmm.
and the select board doesn't know about it, and it's investigated by the police department, and it's stopped, how would they know to investigate this?
All right, so I think there's a few pieces in there, so let me
All right.
try to offer some clarity. First, the select board already has authority to investigate. It has everything that you see here. The select board already has permission to do themselves. And you can correct me if I'm wrong on this.
Keep going.
Okay.
What this does is it allows the select board to assign that authority to another town board, perhaps Seaport, perhaps another board, right? So this just allows them to delegate that power to another group, right? So,
But your question's
Assuming they know it.
right.
like, am I supposed to go during the public comment section on, to catch
I
me and
get-
be like,
yeah.
Officer
Uh-huh.
so-and-so?
So,
Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
So that's actually one of the issues that we came into, is that currently, right now, the board that is assigned to the oversight of the police department is secondary in nature to the investigation of the police department. So that the police can investigate something and say, here's what we found, and this is the report, and in effect, that's it. Whereas there's a large population of people who believe that the point of a civilian oversight board is to come to their own independent findings of an investigation. So this, correct me if I'm wrong, then correct her if she's wrong, is assigning those powers to that board to where through any form of being made aware of a complaint or issue, that board can investigate. They can have access within the means of the documented structure to request those, to do the interviews, to come to their own independent conclusion on said issue. Whereas currently they don't have that ability right now.
Okay.
So it's not specific to CPARB, although that is what brought us to the focus of this. This
I
would
got
be
it. Okay.
general.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
So this isn't just the police department. This could be assigned to any civil authority board
I got it.
of
Okay.
the select board's choosing.
All right. I'm good.
Am I good?
Yeah.
So far?
I guess I want to just note, I feel like I had a strong reaction. I do feel like this language is different than what we discussed like a week ago. I feel like a week ago it was like soft. This is more strong than I remember our sort of discussion being. So I had like a
Okay.
strong reaction to it. I also feel like I've talked with some people, like, I feel like everyone's gonna have a strong reaction to it no matter who they are. Like, I don't even know what my reaction was, but it was strong. Like, it's just such a sensitive and potentially powerful thing. I think there's a lot of opportunity for this to be powerfully good in keeping people safe and upholding a fantastic policing force. I think it can also do a lot of harm if done in the wrong way, if there aren't the right types of, like, civil, you know what I mean? Like, it's that's a risk to me, that, I don't know if that changes my yay or nay sort of feeling on it, but, like, it does feel, like, consequential, empowering. Do you know what I mean? So.
Is there, I'll acknowledge right now that like the specific text that's laid out here first is fully pulled from the S. 75 that we discussed previously, although it's a subset of what's in that.
Right.
But that this group hasn't had a lot of time to spend with this prior to our discussion today. What I wonder is, you said you had a strong reaction, and if there was like a particular piece of this that is giving you pause.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, but like.
Well, I have a couple things that I feel like need to be clarified for me to truly understand what we're saying here, too.
Okay.
So, one piece would be, this is just probably an easy answer. I'll ask this question first. So it says when the misconduct, comes to the attention of the board.
Mm-hmm.
Is that word board referring to the oversight board or the select board?
Yeah, what is it?
I guess my instinct is that it would be the oversight board.
Okay.
Right, because that's under the section of like a civilian oversight board created under the section may, and so then comes to the attention of the board, refers back to.
Okay. I mean, I think if we were going to put that language in, I would like to specify, just to be very clear.
Yeah.
And then also, I also had the question, is this a one-off authority, like is this delegation to the board like one-off, or is it something that once given, the board now has carte blanche? Like, I mean, like is it given to that entity for all time once given, or is it something that as complaints come in, there's some sort of process for them to go forward in getting, is there a process in it, is what I'm saying, right? Or do they just have that, I know I'm being really vague in how to say this, when we said, because this is not going to be specifically for CPAR, even though that's what we're saying it for, I'm just saying, so if the select board was given the authority to empower a board,
Mm-hmm.
are they being given the power to empower that board for specific instances, or are they being given the authority? You know what I mean?
I see.
Couldn't the select board specify that
for all complaints?
Well, right, or just is complaints the limiting term, or I'm just saying, is it just power then?
though? I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
It was my understanding
Sorry.
when talking to Merrill that the select board could choose that. So the select board could say, for, this is your scope versus carte blanche for the entirety of your existence. I guess the one question I do have is, could the select board then also take that away?
Right.
I think all fair questions. I think, well, first, it's our proposal. So if it goes forward, we can make it say anything we want, right? I think as it's currently written, and I am not a lawyer, but as it's currently written, this does not give the select board the civilian oversight board that would be created by the select board here would still be subordinate to the select board, right? So they could still disband that board, they could change its mission, decide to no longer delegate these authorities to that board, right? So I think the original charter change the original charge we were given was to look at ways to grant additional independence, autonomy to CPAR, right? We certainly had some discussions on that, but I don't see that it makes sense for the select board to create an independent board that then lives outside of their purview then forward, right? I think as it's written, in the absence of specific language that says otherwise, the select board could delegate this authority on a case-by-case basis, on a time-limited basis, or on an ongoing basis.
And I think some background context to it, specifically to CPARB, was they have very specific goals that they were tasked with that they're currently not set up to be successful to accomplish those goals. Mm-hmm. And I've been pretty clear with my would say unwillingness to memorialize or institutionalize that particular board into our charter So the alternative, or the idea that was presented was for any future board who might find themselves in a situation where they need extra support through extended powers that only the select board can give them. This is potentially the way that the select board can assign those powers so that the red tape for them to actually accomplish the goals, using CPARB as an example, they could potentially do it. You know, if they needed to look at conduct or complaints or body cam footage that they currently don't have access to, the select board could grant that current board access to do it. They wouldn't have, some of the red tape would be cut down. You know, there is still a lot to digest.
How would this board learn about internal complaints that are discovered by the department and handled by the department? Would the department be expected to reveal those investigations to the outside agency?
That's a good question. What is the process right now?
They're handled internally.
That's my point that I was trying, maybe I didn't articulate it correctly, but there's things that the select board wouldn't know
Potentially, yes.
to do anything with. So what's to prevent that from happening? That way it's circumvented this whole.
Well, does it really circumvent, or is it, I mean, if the department is policing itself and doing it correctly, is it really circumventing the process, or is it doing what it should do?
But how would anybody know
How
that
would
they're
know?
doing it correctly?
Yeah, I mean,
It's just
I would
there's
like
no
to think
window.
that,
Somebody
but
would know.
Yeah.
Well, if somebody made a complaint, then it's not internal.
That's right.
It's, this is things when they're actively working to improve themselves that they discover and take care of, not because somebody complained about it outside.
Oh,
Right.
wait, were you referencing like a complaint within the department, like one officer is complaining about another? Or-
Potentially, or an activity that is noticed by a supervising officer of another officer, who
Okay,
then
gotcha.
brings that officer under an investigation for what he considers to be wrongdoing.
I personally would just say handle your internal stuff internally, but in the event that an officer went to that board and said, hey, here's something that I've talked about,
Then it's external.
then it becomes
Yeah.
external. And probably, you know,
Well, and I think that
repercussions
this last sort of condition here about, you know, alleged ill treatment will kind of have to come to the attention of the board, right? If you had Officer A, you know, go to the chief and say like, hey, I saw Officer B doing something that I'm concerned about. You know, I just personally I think like that's probably where that should start, right? But then if Officer A is not satisfied with the outcome, then this would allow them to come to a civilian board and say, hey, I witnessed this thing that I'm really concerned about, and I tried to go through chain of command, and I didn't get the outcome that I, you know, was satisfied with, and would you also look into this then?
from my standpoint too, like I want it, you know, there has been mentions of obviously the sensitivity of this particular subject regarding the police department. So where I'm comfortable more with this generality is that it's not focused just on the police department. It's not focused on just CPARB. It is for any board that's assigned by the select board, whether that, you know, it could be over some nonsense going on at the library or something around town, whatever the reason for that civilian board being brought, they would have the ability to have investigative powers and the authority to receive, you know, information on misconduct versus just specifically CPARB or specifically focused on the police department, so that there's nobody's targeting the police department here. Nobody's targeting a specific board.
Well,
But the
this is
report is
specifically
very
about a law
focused.
enforcement agency. And,
In the reading of the report.
Correct.
It's true though that the current language in the executive summary isn't
That's what I, that's what I, but
Things
that,
about Dan, I'd like investigated.
that, but that's what I'm,
sure
that's
about that?
specifically what I'm saying.
I see where what's in the executive summary isn't specific to the police department. That probably could be reworded better.
Jackie, do you see, I mean, I'm looking at what's in the executive summary and then I'm looking at what you put in the report. Do you see this entire 2 pages of stuff going into the charter? Or do you just see granting some broad authority and you're suggesting that these are the things that the select board could do? Because there's 2 different things. There's like saying, here's some broad authority, you guys do what you want with it.
Uh-huh.
Or, hey, here's all these, we're trying to be more specific. And here's all the, I mean, I didn't have a sense of what the intention was.
Yeah, which is why I put all the specifics out, because I think from the discussions we've had in this committee, there are things that certainly as a group we've said, fundamentally I think I'm in favor of that, and I'm not in favor of these other things, disciplinary authority, things like that, right? So while acknowledging that this 2 pages of stuff actually being listed on the ballot would be challenging for voters to sort of read in the booth and vote on, I don't know that sort of a less specific, a real broad authority is something that this committee would be in favor of either. I don't.
There's a lot here to package.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like
That's the problem, that if you're saying that we're giving the select board the power to delegate and empower a committee based on certain circumstances to have additional powers that are not stated, then I totally support it, depending on the circumstance. Otherwise you have you have a committee of individuals that are pretty much neutered. They really can't do anything.
Right.
So that's the only way they can do what they're supposedly put into operation to do.
Yeah.
That, I don't know if it's the exact wording, but that, I would totally support that.
Well, and I think this is...
Yeah, that's the way I was kind of going with it.
Without the punishment
Yes.
level.
Yeah,
obviously.
right.
Not getting into all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is why I crafted this language out of S75 the way I did, where I specifically removed...
I just want to understand
an
what we're
ability
asking.
for them to impose discipline. But this
sure.
really, one, the long piece here, right?
Yeah.
Really just gives a committee or a board the ability to look at confidential records when there's an allegation of misconduct.
Okay.
And they have to then keep those records confidential, and then they can make a recommendation on how that should be.
I think I agree 100% where you are. What I'm leaping ahead to in my mind that gives me anxiety is about the mechanics of it, and I'm thinking of myself okay, I have been pulled over because I'm brown, and an officer assumed I only spoke Spanish, which I do not speak. Okay, say I wanted to bring that to somebody's attention. Would I feel more comfortable doing it by a phone call to the police, or would I feel more comfortable doing it to 7 part-time volunteer people who do have training, but it's a small community, and maybe someone's brother-in-law is actually stuff like that. But I don't know if that's just getting too far ahead and worried about the mechanics of it, because I don't know the answer to that question. I would probably do nothing and file no complaint, which has been what I've always done whenever I've run into these issues. So, but I think I'm getting ahead to worried about how would that work, which is beyond, you know, what we have to solve necessarily here.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I get that, and I don't know that I would have felt ambitious enough to like craft this kind of language myself. Like if it wasn't something that had already sort of been put together and thought through and like introduced to the state legislature by two of our senators, right?
yeah.
But it didn't go anywhere.
It didn't.
And I just keep going back, and I know I'm not a member of the committee, but that's what I keep going back. This should be a regional matter, so it gets to those like
Yeah.
having the brother-in-law or the cousin or the neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
If it's regional, you have a less likely chance for that to happen. Plus, there's more resources to give these people legal assistance, investigation, you know, money for investigators, etc. I worry about putting it on a town's on a
there's
town
a
board.
risk.
Yeah.
There's a
That's
huge
the
risk
risk.
that it could go wildly wrong.
As interested as I am in
Mhm.
some venue and platform outside of the police itself to raise these things.
And there currently is a venue.
Mhm.
There are three classes of
Offenses.
wrongdoings
Yeah.
that you can do. A police officer, who, if he is convicted of a crime, it goes automatically to the State Criminal Justice Council,
Mhm.
and his license to operate basically is at risk.
Mm-hmm.
There are two other levels below that remain generally local, with a local police department to investigate and to resolve. But there is a state board that is currently authorized
For the highest
investigate.
level of offenses.
Yeah.
Like once the officer's convicted of a crime.
Yeah.
Mm, I don't even think
No,
it's a
it's not
conviction.
even
It's just
convicted. I think it's alleged,
it's an alleged crime.
Yeah.
If it gets
okay.
investigated by the, and that state board could be, their authority could be expanded, etc.
But an alleged crime, not alleged misconduct.
Well, yeah, a misconduct that rises to a crime, at least. Yeah, I mean, it could be both, I guess, right? You know, but
Right.
it is clearly something that is a criminal
Mhm.
act,
Yeah.
or could be if it was true.
Colleen, I see your hand up.
I just have a question. So, does this really warrant like a charter change? Like, would the select board need this to be a part of the charter to create a board like this to exist in our town?
I don't think so.
So they created CPARB without a charter change. So couldn't it create something like this if they felt necessary without memorializing it in a charter?
Colleen, I think that's a fantastic question. It's one that's been asked before, in fact. It's in fact one that the select board asked before, to my understanding, and on advice of council, they were told that they do not have the authority to do this without a charter change. There are other groups out there that believe the select board does already have that authority. So there's not really a clear answer that I've seen. There's a variety of opinions on that question.
I think that the fact that you've stripped the ability to do discipline makes it much more likely that they have the authority to do this.
And didn't she say that by us putting in our charter strengthens that ability from a legal standpoint,
Oh,
because
yeah.
it makes
Right.
it
Clarifies
specific?
things.
Yeah, if it goes in our charter,
That was
there's
my
no
next question. That
Yeah.
would it strengthen their ability by having it in the charter to do this, either to exercise that option to do this if they felt so necessary?
Yeah, I think if it was in the charter, then there would be no room to argue one way or the other.
Okay.
I guess a question for those of you on the committee, like if we voted this down, what would the future of CPARB look like? Could it ever be effective if they never had any of these powers?
Effective at what?
Right. I don't know.
I think, I think the question of their ability to be effective and efficient is something that's been kind of talked about at length, and but I also believe that they have the ability to kind of control their destiny on that. which is why, like, in our subcommittee discussions, I've wanted, if there was going to be any implementation of a recommendation, I personally wanted it not to include CPART, because I did not feel comfortable with that board, with their operations. You know, I'm sure they'll work on things that they've expressed to us, well-intentioned, all that stuff, but I didn't feel comfortable moving forward with them. I feel more comfortable with a generalized language for any board to be empowered, so that the same thing doesn't happen where we have a board that's effectively been here for 2+ years with nothing to show for it, for reasons that maybe this addresses. And that's kind of, I don't know if that answers your question.
And historically, the select board, when they wrote the resolution for CPAR, specifically did not give them those authorities. They were not looking to hand those authorities
Yeah.
over to CPAR,
Yeah.
which is why it's the Community Policing Advisory and Review Board, as opposed to something else.
I mean, I think part of what we keep hearing from a lot of members of the community too is, like, I don't, like, the only process for me to report something concerning about the police department is to go to the police department with that, and then they get to investigate that, and if nothing comes of it, like, there's not really any additional recourse, right? And right or wrong, I think there's concern that the police department is not the appropriate agency always to be investigating, you know, their own, you know, concerns about their own behavior. Especially like situations where, you know, it's not even like here's like a specific thing that an officer, like an affirmative action that this officer took that I'm concerned with, but even like I went to the police with the concern and they were just dismissive and didn't follow up on it, and just nothing came of it. Like, I brought this to their attention 3 times and they just don't feel like helping me. Like, who do I like go to and say, I would, you know, this is a problem, you know? And so I think without a group separate from the police department that has the ability to sort of look at some of these confidential things, there's, you know, that's, I think, where a lot of these concerns of trust or come in, right? And I acknowledge that there's a regional effort underway, and there's a state level board that looks at some things, but maybe not all things, or, you know. Yeah. This is a tricky one for me too, right? Like, I've always had good interactions with the police, you know. Knock on wood, you know, maybe I'm fortunate,
Yeah.
right? But
I mean, yeah, I agree with you, and I do have reservations that, like, I just want that civilian oversight board to then be, like, really good and
Right.
actually professional and actually, like, great candidates who have time and get resources for an attorney if, you know, like, I just want all of that to be perfect.
when I guess, like, that's part of the question
that's
too.
what it
It's
is.
like a chicken and egg thing, right? Like if you have a board that, like, really has no ability to act, right?
Yeah.
Then the people that are going to be willing to commit their time to that board are going to be a different set of people, right? That the people that really have some of that expertise and that willingness to do something meaningful
Right.
aren't gonna apply to a board that can't do anything meaningful, right?
Yeah. And I just feel there's, like, so many just, like, guardrails that would be needed to keep them, this board, the civilian oversight board, professional and on track to not accidentally harming those who filed the complaints, potentially. Or making a mess for the, just like
Sure.
being chaotic for the police department and like hindering what could have already been like a good, a procedural investigation, just like making a mess in the middle. So, yeah, it would come with a lot of work and resources and responsibility from those people. I hope that the select board would be really mindful in like who gets on it and stuff.
But, I kind of feel that if we don't move positively in this direction, why would we even have this board?
Right.
Agreed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eliminate it. Either we give them something, some tools to move forward. It's not going to be perfect. There's going to be outliers. There'll probably be additional things that the next charter review will have to enforce as part of this. To be a little bit more specific, but it's a step in the right direction. And if you're going to have the committee to do this, if you're going to dissolve why have it? I mean, why even do it? I mean, without something to give them teeth. Otherwise, why would you get any interest sitting on that committee?
That's why I asked.
Yeah.
What is the future of CPARB if we
Yeah, I mean,
don't pass this?
if we don't pass
nothing.
this, I would say, why do it?
I mean, and again, like, to Michael's point, like, about enshrining CPARB, like, this was written in a way that anything could happen with CPARB, and, like, this would, if it goes forward, would still be an option for the select board next month, in 5 years,
And I would say, in 5 years, if this was never exercised, then don't have a board, don't have an advisory board.
And it's possible this could go in the charter and the select board could still not assign these powers to CMAR.
Right.
You're absolutely right. And a future charter committee could say, don't have it. Go regional. For some of these and bypass something local.
In the interest of time,
Yeah, I'm ready to vote personally.
are you ready? I'm wondering about others. Do others feel ready to vote on this? Or do others want more time to consider this and come back next week?
If you're going to do this, it's going to take some serious attorney time trying to craft this language. I would say let's get, because Merrill's going to be gone next Thursday.
That's right.
So if you want some language that can pass muster, we might want to know sooner rather than later if you guys want something to be crafted. And then maybe you can look at the language again or whatever, but
Okay.
I think punting it down the road, you're just not going to be able to have the knowledge to present it to the select board in a educated way.
Got it.
That's just my opinion.
All right. I guess then let's vote.
Oh, can I just?
Sure.
Okay. Just to be clear, what we are actually voting on isn't what is in the executive summary, but it's actually what's on the page under recommendations under CPARB, where it has the full 4-part.
Yes.
Is that right? Specifically, the committee.
Starting here, at this time, the committee recommends, it's that word, right? Plus everything underneath it, up to number 4.
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
I'm not going to read all of that again.
You always look at me when you say that in the interest of time. I'm starting to get a conflict here.
All right. So, by show of hands, voice vote for those remotely, all those in favor of this charter amendment, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Hi here.
Oh, aye.
Yeah, sorry, I was late.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. The motion carries.
I'll say, I'll be on 3 airplanes this weekend, and I want to read this a couple times, and so if it's okay, I might email, across all the subsections with, maybe follow-up questions and comments about how we can add more nuance. I think there's a lot of nuance here already, but like, to your point, like, we're putting this forward because if we don't, they might as well dissolve, and yes, it's a mess, it's a risk, there's these other things, but I'd like
There's
to.
no-
Also, a select board can be a mess when you have people that are going,
Yeah.
Well,
any administration can be a mess.
No, and I'm sure that there's gonna be more discussion on granular things around it.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we
But
invite that.
this is the
and-
beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Open the dialogue.
Yeah. So yeah, just embracing that context and messiness and like all of it, but still wanting to invite that because it's productive. It could move us in the right direction.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to get this all down to a one page, right?
Yeah.
So Stuart, for us, we should make sure that we send all of these recommendations, including the long charter change that Jackie's drafted, to Meryl, like first thing Monday morning.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
we'll want her thoughts pretty quickly. Okay.
Okay.
I have a couple of edits to that,
Oh, to the report.
to the report for that section before you send it though. They're not content.
Okay.
I would just,
Okay.
yeah,
They're
just
just like
send it to
writing some
Stuart,
things out
send
that
it
are abbreviated.
send it either to Jackie
Yeah.
or Stuart and me and Jackie or however, just so
Yeah.
we get
Yeah.
it and
Yep.
we can get it to Meryl to review, or at least get her started reviewing it. She may have her colleagues review it, but
Okay. Yeah. All right. I don't think I missed anything, but are there other proposals that we should consider and vote on today? I went through the report. I thought I pulled them all out, but
I think so too. Another thing I want to do is read all of the public comments and our responses. Because, I think Clark had a lot of interesting, simple, practical ideas that, I agreed with in a lot of ways, but didn't feel. I just want to, double check all of his comments, all the other ones. So that's another thing I'm putting on my own to-do list.
okay. Yeah.
So I might raise one of those, but I don't think so.
One of the things that you, other than the two very specific changes to the charter that are listed here,
Yeah.
these others, you don't indicate where you think they ought to be within the charter.
Mm.
we can let Meryl
Well,
figure that
You're
out.
gonna let Meryl figure that out? Is
Yeah.
that the idea?
I mean,
think
that's we could say it should go here, and she'd be like, "Oh, it better go here." So I think that's probably Meryl's
Okay.
in Meryl's purview.
Okay.
I don't think we care where it goes as long as it's operative.
I
right?
would like number 3 to go on line 47, section A.
That's the kind of recommendation I thought we'd get from you, Mike.
Well, that's amazing. That's great. We
this
we got through that.
That's impressive.
I would say, who wrote the executive summary? You guys?
I did most. Well, I mean, it's pulled, but yeah, I did most of it.
I mean, I think it can be longer. I don't think it has to do. I don't know if that's what you'll plan to do.
That's a great segue to our
Okay.
next agenda item, which is a discussion of the final report draft as opposed to just the specific proposals that we've talked about. So that's a great idea. I made a note myself, expanded intro under executive summary.
Thank you, Beth.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you.
Maybe Rebecca can leave a note to us right on the document. We'll sort of edit it collaboratively up here.
Okay. What I have here is not, it is the same, but it's not
It
going to
is
be
the
live.
same. It
This
is.
is not being projected up there, is it?
It is.
Oh,
Oh, good. It is.
okay.
We weren't sure if it was going to work, but Jackie and I tested it and
Yeah.
it was working.
Well, as I type things in, it's not, oh, there it goes. I get just delayed. Okay.
Yeah, it's yeah.
You have a few extra H's there.
There's an
I was just putting the H in to see if it worked.
there's an internet in the middle. Yeah. Colleen, you can see this document we're all looking at?
I can, yeah.
Great. I'm happy to open it up to other thoughts about changes to the report. I have a few edits of my own that I'd be happy to discuss, but
I have a whole list.
me too. Maybe let's go section by section. Anything else for the executive summary? This section other than an expanded intro?
Well, we're gonna remove this one,
Oh, yes.
right? So, right? We're
Yeah.
removing it, yeah? I'm gonna delete. Delete. Okay,
Great.
got it. All right.
Okay, hearing none. The next section here, Dan, if you can scroll for us, maybe.
Sorry.
Oh,
I don't,
The,
well, how come my scrolling doesn't look that way?
well,
is your
'cause-
scrolling not working?
well, she doesn't. Yeah, she can type, and you'll see the changes, but you have to do the scrolling.
Okay. Vision of labor here. Alright. Tell me what you want to look at.
Teamwork.
Notes on the review process. I just put to do because it's clearly not done.
I mean, I think just include what you've mentioned in the public forums, to the select board, which has been fantastic and very clear as to what the process is. I think we could keep it short and sweet like that. And
Yeah.
I would just like to include like our appreciation for all the public comments in the, whether at the public forum or not, and how we use that to inform our decisions as well.
Okay. I'm not imagining that we're like actually going to draft language today together,
No.
but like we'll discuss the spirit of what we'll add, and maybe the admin committee will make some of those changes.
And then will people be able to like email to you like things that they notice? Because like
Yeah.
I'd be happy to go through it and you know, because it looks like there's some things that were left blank. Maybe I can fill them
Exactly,
in. et cetera.
exactly,
So
yeah.
I'm happy
Yeah.
to, if I can, I'm happy to do that. And if I notice something, that way we don't have to like word for word during the committee.
Yeah.
Right
yeah,
now, but-
yeah, I would appreciate that from anyone, everyone, and then what I'm thinking is we'll go through and we'll just agree to like the spirit of the changes that you know, any larger changes to be made. And then next week, you know, we'll send out another draft for everybody, and we can just probably, hopefully at that point, just vote and say, yes, this looks good to me.
That's great.
All right, moving down a little bit then,
Forgetting my duty, sorry.
to voting in elections, like that first paragraph or two there.
there was a typo down towards the bottom of the second.
Oh yeah, extends the with two T's. Yeah. Middle of the second paragraph
Where is it?
there.
After quality of life extends
Oh, the double T.
the double T. It's a strong T.
I still had, okay. Had edits
It's
from-
underlined here.
Yeah. I
Oh,
know.
okay,
I'm just saying, I
okay.
still had edits that I was making from the first page.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry.
I'm not there yet. I'm just,
Um,
okay.
one of the things that came up as I looked at this was where it says the second question is how do we define being a Benningtonian? I don't at all disagree with sort of like the spirit of that, but I feel like in light of the specific recommendations, it was a little maybe confusing to me. You know, should maybe be clearer that
Yeah, no, 100%. I agree.
Where is that?
up, Dan, sort of that line by itself. The
How do
second
we define
question
being
is how do we,
Bennington?
yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure it's in the right spot.
Yeah.
You say that again? I'm sorry. So I had also a comment on that one.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to type and get there and also pay attention, and I'm not doing a good job. So what did you say about that?
Just that the second charge or the second piece of the charge was clearly non-citizen residents. And I think certainly we sort of looked at that in the sense of like what's a Benningtonian, right? But in the report, I think it could be more clear that like we connected those two ideas.
Yeah, it could have been something along the lines of the second question asks, do we consider non-citizen residents of Bennington to be Benningtonians?
Yeah.
Or-
Yeah, something, yeah.
Equal in rights.
So, right, I had that.
Okay, don't you have a hard copy? Oh, you have notes on
I
that?
have my notes on here, sorry. Whether all Benningtonians should be given the ability to vote, and how do we define a Benningtonian?
Yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah.
I was told you were going to wordsmith it.
That's fine. Okay. So I wrote it out part, and then I had some before that. Can we go back up?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Sorry. So in the, I just think we should change in the first sentence the sacred rights, just because of the religious connotation for the word sacred, and maybe say fundamental.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I have no objection to that.
I'm not married to it.
Okay.
I mean, I am kind of comfortable with you, like, doing a track changed edit of, like, everything, and then
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
like...
Yeah, I thought, honestly, I thought that's
Yeah.
what was going to happen, was that this, what is here, you were going to wordsmith in the way that you do it.
Okay.
Mhm.
But that's
Because
fine.
you have
I
our,
will-
you have
Yes,
our,
I'll hold all those off.
I
Okay,
was
didn't know
like,
if you wanted
she's gonna
to-
rearrange even like, I don't even mind
Yeah.
if you rearrange
Yeah.
like
Okay.
how things are organized and by cutting and
Yeah.
pasting and otherwise editing.
I just want the third word on the fifth line.
Even after drinking water.
I'm going to speak to you about what goes in here.
I had under the voting stakeholders, where we talked about the Brattleboro town clerk, the Winooski town clerk. Like, could we just put their names?
Sure.
And then I'm happy for this to be a little popcorn style. Next one I had was the paragraph that starts similarly. I changed a few things in here. I think just for like tone or whatever. So instead of saying there was a misperception, I thought we would just say there was often a perception in public comments. And then instead of the committee wishes to clarify that this is not true and in fact the Constitution prescribes, maybe just say the committee clarified with council that the Constitution prescribes.
Just fine.
Yeah.
You know? And then just strike the word incorrectly at the end. Criteria that is common and often assumed as a nationwide mandate. Just tried to like make that like read a little more
Yeah,
neutral.
I wrote that, and I'm
Yeah.
Choosing.
all
Yeah.
for the like edits.
All right, I'm not gonna be able to do these live then. Okay, I'm making no notes in here.
Yeah.
Like I don't know the
I mean,
prime
I can
names.
share my things with you too. As
Perfect.
as we talked
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds like the most efficient. If you
Let's do
have
that.
something, you can just send it
Yeah.
to Jackie, then everybody will review it.
Top of the next page, 4 towns.
Mm-hmm.
Was it 4 or was it just the 3?
I needed to double check that.
I'm pretty sure it was only 3.
Okay.
I wasn't sure if it was South Burlington.
I'd say at least 3, and if there's more, you're not being inaccurate, right?
I'll double check that.
As part of the sort of this bulleted list of stuff, there's a spot where it says undocumented residents, only legal residents of the United States and Bennington, Vermont were considered. I just thought it was maybe important to note that, like, we did consider undocumented immigrants. We talked about it. We considered that they might try to vote. We sort of came to the conclusion that most of them wouldn't try that. But I just felt like maybe saying that we didn't consider them was
I only said that because we talked specifically about undocumented, and I think it was everyone voted against considering undocumented.
Considered and dismissed.
We dismissed
Right.
undocumented.
like, I just don't want it to read like we didn't think of that at all.
I leave that to you.
That was the consensus of the committee that undocumented, et cetera,
Yeah,
should not be
something-
allowed
yeah.
to vote or something
Yeah.
like that.
We can
Some-
reword that.
We discussed it, but there was a consensus.
I just the reason why that's, I think, important to get right is because I don't want any confusion that undocumented people are being considered in this proposal
In our recommendation.
in our recommendation,
Right, right.
because then that has a complete inverse effect
Yep.
potentially to that. I mean, I would say almost certainly.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And then, sort of under externalities, that first paragraph, low voter turnout, towards the end of that, it says, our committee agrees that our role in this charter charge is to determine whether or not the charge can be done, not to determine if it should be done, as that is the decision of those elected to the select board and the residents of Bennington. I maybe feel more comfortable saying as that is the decision of the residents of Bennington. Like, it's not the decision of the select board.
agreed.
Well, it kind of is though, right? Because all of this goes to the select board, and if the select board says no thanks, then the citizens never get a chance to vote.
Yeah, I can see both sides.
I also didn't, I had an issue with that in a different way, because I also felt like it wasn't just what can be done, because I mean, we narrowed down all possibilities, you know, of what can be done
Right.
to the ones that we actually did feel like should be done. So I feel like taking the should out of there, I think we limited it. I mean, we did narrow it down to from all that can be done to what we believed, you know, are good options to put forth. So I don't think it's, I feel like that whole part needs to be kind of reworded.
I mean, maybe we can just use like similar phrasing that I used when I presented to the select board and say like not whether it like aligns with the values of Bennington residents or.
I think, yes. I also think like as your role, like I just have a lot of faith in you and I just trust you to like workshop and edit and then come back to us, and I think we'll probably agree on 4 out of 5 changes you suggest. Like we can go through, you know, because I don't know exactly what I should read instead. I just
Yeah.
want to be mindful of like how long this is, and
Yeah.
words matter.
Yeah,
And it might
yeah,
just be
absolutely.
easier for you to take like 3 hours to get deep into it and then come back to us and us to review.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And yeah, we can do it that way.
I'm just trying
Just
to
flagging
empower,
places that we-
honestly, the two of you, because I think you're also really strong writers and we're on the same page generally. So.
All right. Heard. I will stick to more substantial
Okay.
changes. Uh,
Jack, you have one note on format, what,
yeah.
and I don't know where to put it, whether it's at the end or right after the executive summary or right before the public comment, is that, you know, the action we talked about, and I just don't want to forget about it, the page that includes the actual ballot items or proposed ballot items, and I just want to make sure we don't forget about that, because I think that's
Yeah.
really going to be helpful. I want to make sure it's where it should be, and that's what we're gonna try to get from Meryl, is that language.
Yeah. I do have that here.
Oh, you did it? Okay. I missed it.
To be determined, proposed ballot to be determined, but it's right before the public comments
Okay,
start.
so that's where you guys put it. That's perfect. That's perfect. Missed that completely. So disregard that comment.
I have a, well, no. I mean, I just have a question just to get your feedback now before I go through all the effort of doing it. One of the thoughts that I had was organizing this for each of the sections. Instead of just start with the background, is to start with the recommendation and then give our background and rationale behind it. I feel like that might be a stronger way to like present a report.
Don't bury the lead.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know what people think of that, but I mean, it would be all the same content. It would just be restructuring it and then giving it. How do the people feel strongly about that in any one way?
If it's me reading it, I want to see the meat before.
Yep.
Because I may
I
not
mean, it
want
is
to
an
read the rest of
executive
it.
summary, but up to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I think that's what we
Yeah.
discussed. The executive summary was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can see.
Well, I
That's
think
really-
I think what you're saying is also at the beginning of each section.
Right.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I feel strongly about it, but I would say, yeah, I think that, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
So are we talking about format now?
A little bit.
A little bit about
But,
format?
yeah.
Can I start with the font? No, I'm kidding, no.
I've already checked it, the color.
Okay. Are we going to have page numbers on it?
Mhm.
Like 1 of 10 or 1 of
Yeah.
20 or,
37.
yeah, something like that, yeah.
Yeah,
was
there,
rounding.
there were two like
No.
overarching things that I had along those lines.
Okay, because I was wondering if we would have a table of contents
Yes.
as well.
Mhm.
Where if somebody was looked and saw, like if I picked up the report and the table of contents said final recommendation, I would go right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That kind, okay, all right.
Yeah, I'd like to see a table of contents, page numbers, and then I noticed as I read through the whole thing, like we all variously like use like slightly different language to talk about like this committee, our committee, we, us.
Yes.
And I think probably we should like pick one and stick with it.
Absolutely. And then also things like sometimes the word town is capitalized, sometimes it isn't. There's a lot of things that are inconsistent. We also talk about recommendations sometimes as amendments, sometimes recommendations, sometimes like, I feel like all that stuff needs to be consistent so that it is apparent that we're saying the same thing every time.
Yeah.
All right, so I figured a lot of that stuff was already covered. I just didn't want to, just wanted to mention it, that's all.
And I
That
can
is
make the
tough.
effort of going through and making it all consistent and then bringing it back. And if everybody's like, I really like this word better, I can just make a blanket change across. But I'll pick
Yeah.
one and then we can.
I would honestly
That's
feel
great.
more comfortable with you just going through it. No, I'm being serious. Like,
Yeah.
you go through it, and then when we reconvene, that's when we do
That's
the,
what I'm saying,
the
yeah.
nitpick kind
Right.
of thing.
Then you can say, no, this word better. Yeah, I agree.
It is a challenging job to take a bunch of different styles and try
Yeah,
to
it's
make it
not-
sound the same. So
it won't work.
good for you.
There was one, so far as I'm looking through, one more like substantial thing that I was looking at in the
Just trying to make this.
Throwing it out there.
towards the very end of the properties stuff. Property resource article 30, bullet point.
Yeah.
I think it's the next page.
Get close.
Yeah, property
Oh, here we
resource
are. Got
article
it.
30.
Wow, I can't believe I found it.
So I know you, Carolyn, you talked about this, like when you shared about the conversation you had with, is it Paul? Or, seemed to, where it said enforcement of Article 30 and overseeing an expanded scope would require a minimum of one additional part-time person to conduct inspections enforcement. Town estimates the cost of this role to be approximately $45,000. it seemed like really specific to me. I didn't realize when I first read through it that was like information that was relayed from Paul, from someone at the town, like in that department. So when I first read it, I thought like, well, an expanded scope through additional staffing is vital to having the intended impact or something. But I'm happy to like leave the more specific stuff in there, but maybe we just make it clear that like the person that currently does this work is in charge of staffing this, said these things.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Once they get open the window, we
Didn't have a lot on the stuff that I wrote because I'm perfect.
According to the public comments.
Yeah.
Where's
Crafted
part,
the
where's
response
part
to
of the
that
Red Sea? I didn't see that in there.
No, I'm certainly not. But you know, if there was something that I had seen, I would have changed, and I'm happy to hear other perspectives. There were a few things in the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I don't want to create more work. I mean, this is already, it's really good and it's long and everything. I don't know if it might help to preface, you know, having the background section like CPARB was founded and like whatever as a result of a ordinance, you know, right?
Mhm.
Ordinance, proclamation, whatever.
Yeah, resolution.
Yeah, resolution. That might be helpful to some readers.
Yeah.
Like, I don't
Yeah,
know.
acknowledge. Yeah. I did leave that note for myself. More intro.
And I found doing my minutes, it goes back to your comment about the committee, our committee. I refer to the subcommittees as subcommittees, and the committee is the committee in my minutes.
Okay.
And that might be some way of segregating, because as you read through this, it's the committee, but which committee, you know, it's the property committee, not the property subcommittee.
Wait, I think we
Or
had
is
all
this about
this.
all of those coming together?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what we
It
had
was all
discussed.
coming
that-
together. It was
yeah,
one committee.
we were going to present a unified front. That's why we're going through the final report together.
Yeah.
I will say I really appreciate the quotes in here, that you have like literal quotes from your stakeholder interviews. I think that's quite powerful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I mean, there were some things like in those interviews that was like,
Powerful.
I'll write that down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Drew and I are surprised you didn't include the comment from the last.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, what's kind of.
That's going to be part of the cover letter.
What, from the last forum?
It's gonna be the
That's
bottom
public comment.
signature of each page.
Our response to Jim Vire's comment says about the local options tax says
Yeah.
we don't feel that this is best handled with the charter revision, but turns out we're making that charter revision, so
Yeah.
like maybe we should.
Yeah.
A couple of these responses to Peter Odiana, to Clark Adams, it just felt like what we have right now is the response like doesn't directly address like what the commenter was getting at. So for example, the town select board will conduct a minimum of quarterly open meetings where individuals may present their concerns. The response is these meetings have already been initiated. It just feels like Clark is asking for that to be mandated, and so we're not really responding to the substance of his
Yeah.
comment, right? So I just thought we could maybe take a little more care there.
Yeah, I think so.
Looks like a comment by Marie Corrales got duplicated because one of them is in all caps and one of them was like reformatted. Nice. Those are changes we can make. And then one of the other ones from Maria Corrales here, where she referred to a study by the National Institute of Medicine, and when I brought that comment to this committee, I added some notes. I found that study and provided some quotes about that. it wasn't clear to me that we wanted that to be part of our response. But I'm happy to leave that as part of the response or as a separate sort of note to the reader, like here's the study that Maria was referring to, that we think Maria was referring to, or if we think that we just pulled that
That's a voting
out.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if it's relevant, because I did that in the properties section. I
Mhm.
like acknowledged that there was one particular comment. I rose it up. I sort of talked about if it's worth sort of
Mhm.
pulling out. I think that's great.
No, I
So-
think it belongs. Either
Okay.
it belongs there, or something to the effect of, this study also has contradictory
Mhm.
Mhm.
observations of what the comment said.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some thing that was totally opposite.
And
Okay.
maybe, yeah, no, I agree with you, 100%. I agree with you. And I feel like that maybe just should be pulled down from just being like a note to being in part of the response.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But I agree, and I also think it just shows that, we took comments seriously, and we looked into when people gave us the information, like we
Right.
did some investigation based upon that,
Mhm.
which was our job, and which we wanted, we wanted input so we could look into things further.
Yeah,
And-
because some people could take her, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is that your check?
Okay.
I mean, because Michael and I are both on properties and
Mhm.
voting. What's common in those is there's a paragraph that I think is like, for voting, there were significant public comments on them. They ranged from this and this, including this, and give space for that within the body of it.
Yeah.
And then similarly for properties, there was only one. It was from Jen, and so I pulled that out. So I think in terms of formatting, that could be common across, acknowledging maybe after the context section exactly what type of public comment we had on it. Like governance. I mean, had some. CPARB, like
Still
Didn't have
have
any?
none.
had none, but some during the, you know what I mean? Just like
Mm.
adding that color, so it's not like only an annex, but it also like lives, throughout.
Mm.
So I'm in favor of, and we don't have a page limit, so like, whatever.
Yeah.
Do the page number.
28. And we got 3 pages to work with.
I'll just increase the font, we're there.
And then the last thing I have is there's one remaining comment to the voting group from Jan Blair that has, or I guess, 2 remaining responses for voting where the voting subcommittee came up with multiple responses, and I don't know if we want to work internally to like figure out which one. Or,
Whatever.
Just do Michael's.
It don't,
Whatever. So,
all right.
doesn't
Okay.
matter to me.
Oh, that's why there's a 1 and a 2?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was like, first of all, second of all.
yeah, I'm easy.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Does
Very
that?
good start.
Yeah, a start. Yeah. Anything else from? I've done a lot of talking here. Yeah.
So
like,
amending the comment, like amending responses to the comments, like are we, who's doing that?
I mean, I think
Depends on the comment.
I mean, yeah. Open for discussion, I guess.
I'm happy to have you do it because I want as much of this to be like, you've already seen the intention of the comment. So I feel like changes to the document need to be in that one voice for us to review, and then like if I was to be like, no, that wasn't the intention of my comment, similar to like what we do with the minutes. So here's the extra context kind of thing. I'm fine with that, so that there's not, hey, here's another email and insert this in, like. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. If, while I'm doing that, it's okay for me to reach out
Yeah.
individually to people to say like, I really have absolutely no idea what you're talking
What are you saying?
about, for example.
So I expect a few emails from you.
Surprise. Okay.
Okay.
So that includes responding to public comments more thoroughly.
Yeah, oh, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I think so. Right?
okay.
And you're gonna translate in Spanish?
Yeah, I'll do it in Spanish.
Okay.
But I'm gonna read this, like again slowly. Maybe I'll email you, try to do it organized.
No, this is.
And does this include the couple comments we got in the last
No.
2
No.
days now? So we'll add those.
No.
Or any that we get till the end of next week. Right.
Right.
I mean, if you send the comments, the new ones, then I'll respond
Yeah. Great.
Is it,
over the weekend. So you
is it
have-
something you also want to review in admin? Maybe.
Yeah.
It's
Do you
up
guys
to
want
you.
to? I mean, it's up. I mean, to the whole group. I don't know if it's necessary or not.
I mean,
If it's not, then fine. I just thought if you wanted another forum to bring it up, but it doesn't have to be. You could reach out to the people here and we just review it.
Yeah, I would let you decide.
Okay.
I mean, whatever way's more comfortable for you, let's put it that way.
Okay. Yeah, I just have to see because I feel like it's going to take a lot of time. So it might just be easier for me just to sit down alone, kind of
Okay.
dig in,
Mhm.
and then reach out when I need to.
Yeah, great. Colleen, anything?
No, I'm good.
All right. Yes.
Sorry. One
No.
other thing, just we didn't really touch on lessons learned, and I just wanted to make sure that that's one section that I'm not going to write by myself. So if people can either send those to Jackie and you can
Yeah.
funnel them to me or whatever, but I feel
Are
like
they
that's
intended to
important.
be lessons learned for each section? Or is it just a general, like, here's each of the committee members' lessons that they learned throughout this experience?
I think it's advice to in 5 years, the
Yeah.
next
Okay.
committee,
Mhm.
right?
Okay.
Like,
Well, to the next committee or to the
And-
select
and then
board
the
when
select
they're forming
board.
the next
Okay.
Yeah.
committee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure.
And I think we said that we would sort of discuss that as a group on next Friday. Right, so like take some notes, have some ideas, maybe send some thoughts in, and I'll, we'll compile them into the second draft of the document, hopefully the final draft of the document, but then we'll look at those sort of together.
and did we agree on an expanded executive summary? Sort of.
That we would have one?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think so, yeah.
we agreed on that.
Okay. And that one of you will draft it?
Yeah.
The executive gets to do it. Herself.
I think she's already done enough based on the letter correspondence I've seen.
Yeah.
The other thing on the agenda, not that I'm trying to stop discussion on the report, although I feel like that's petering out a little bit.
Yeah.
But also I think flows in nicely. The last agenda item was discussion of the public forum this coming Wednesday. Like we had talked about, I always imagined that the tone of that would largely be sharing with the public the information that we use to come to our conclusions. I think largely the PowerPoint is like this in slide form. Does that seem right to people?
is it?
I didn't see it that way.
No?
I thought that maybe, as we did last time with, and it doesn't have to be each subcommittee, could really just be one, it doesn't matter, is to go through the record on page 1 and give some background. Some. Again, to me, I'm concerned about the time for them to talk. So I'm more cognizant of the time we take to deliver that message,
Okay.
if that makes sense. In other words, I'd rather hear them. They may have some once they see final recommendations and some context of how we got there, and then open it up at that point, instead of going through a PowerPoint with everything in the final report, because it could change too. It could look different.
Yeah, I saw it as like dumbing it down to a more bullet point. Here's a quick, one pager section, similar to what we did before, topic by topic. And then the report itself actually provides those of us speaking with the notes that we would, in terms of presenting it. And then we get to the public comment. This way we're also not held to, this is the document that you presented to us, even though we're saying this is the, nothing's finalized yet. That's how I saw it.
I didn't necessarily. Maybe this is what I said, but it's not what I meant.
Oh,
that
okay.
like everything in here is on the slides. Right? Certainly, like a condensed version of this. The sort of top bullet points. But I think largely. My thought was that the content that we're sharing, not necessarily on the slides, but that we're sharing in general, like we've already generated.
Yes, I agree with that.
Well, here's a question. The first public forum was like a third presentation and like 2/3 comment, right? Is that fair to say?
No, I would say it was the other way around.
2/3 and a third.
Yeah.
Do you think so?
Oh, yeah.
There wasn't a lot. It wasn't a long
No.
Public
time.
comment.
No.
Okay. Do you envision a similar sort of time breakdown for the second one?
It really depends on the public and how many people show up and how passionately they feel about their opinions. I think we have more information to share this time, but I think because we're closer to the end, we might get more of a response from the public too. So it's hard for me to
That's fair.
gauge.
That's fair.
I do think we've answered a lot of questions though with our approach. So I feel like in some ways that's why public comment has really been mitigated.
Same.
Just my assumption.
And a lot
my
of,
feeling.
I think people's comments will be like, okay, talk to the select board because we're sort of nearing the end. Like it's too late.
It's like, even with voting, which got, 5 out of 6 or 6 out of 7 comments at the previous one. Like most of them started with, I don't support undocumented, well, we've made very clear, undocumented people are not being considered to vote. So that part's not a discussion. Just as one example, potentially, because that came up in every single discussion.
Did we ever get a answer for the gentleman that was here last week?
So I was gonna ask,
Because
like about
I'm sure
Gun High
this is going to
approval
come up
spending.
again if it's still out there.
I'm sorry, what was?
His question about the legality of the town committing an
Thresholds.
expenditure. That whole.
I did ask Merrill in that meeting.
Yeah, but I don't know if it was.
So if you're asking if it's legal, yes, it is legal for the town to do what it did. If you're asking, I think what he was asking is would it be legal to put a limitation on
Yeah,
that in the
yeah.
charter.
Yeah.
And you can always ask for anything, but whether or not the legislature will.
To
I'm just trying to head off.
yeah.
You know, I understand what you, but I don't think we can say, I mean, if his question is, can you put it on the ballot? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Should we put it on the ballot? That's a different question, but that's
think-
less of a legal question, more of a political question.
To that sort of outstanding comment that was recent, I think maybe what we could do is put it at the end of our public comment things, because you invited him at one point, like, can you write it down? And he
That's
sort
right, I
of
told
wasn't
him I
interested in
would.
doing that. So you can be like, note from the editor, note from the chair. This came up. Here's our response, just as if
Yeah.
it was received like any other.
Maybe we
way.
could just hold him 30 seconds. Then he started.
No, that's a good point. I did tell him that I would sort of capture the essence of his question
close
and
that
put
thread,
it
or,
in
you know what I
our
mean?
report as a comment.
Yeah.
Just
And thank you for
Follow up with
reminding me of
Meryl
that.
too if she
Yeah.
has any final, like, while we acknowledge that it is legal, that we, you know, just like we respond to the other ones, sort of like.
I'm just trying to head off something
Yeah,
that's going
that's
to take
good.
us in a whole different
Thank you,
direction.
Joe. It's a great point.
Yeah.
It's a great point.
Back to the presentation and what's in our PowerPoint slides, I just wanted to share something that actually you had said to me that I was thinking about, which was, you know, it's an opportunity for us to share with the public information that then they can use when they're at the polls so that they're better informed voters if this should come up. So we've gained a lot of insight through this process, and people won't necessarily sit down and thoroughly read our report. They may just listen to what we say. And so I think it does give us the opportunity to provide information that supports these recommendations, so that they can make informed decisions whenever town meeting day comes up. So,
And even prior to that, the 2 hearings that the
And-
select board
and the
had
hearings.
on it too.
So that brings up a question I had was beyond this. So like once we submit the report to the select board, what is our role? Done? We're not going to be called back later prior to town meeting day to speak on this?
You may be asked during the public hearing process
Okay.
to speak, to defend your recommendations. That's really going to be a call for the board.
Okay.
Although I think it would be somewhat normal for the individuals from this committee to take a real interest in attending those public hearings.
Yeah.
I guess the real question I have then about our forum on Wednesday and the slides that we will present from is, where are those slides going to come from? I mean, we talked to kind of, it's this content, but who's going to make those slides? How does that, like, is that just, who's presenting on these things? Like,
Well, here's the question.
I'm gonna be busy.
Are you like a table of contents type of person? Like when I do long reports, I do like a table of contents with different types of headers. We sort of have that, though it's sloppy, right? Because
Yeah,
we did it
'cause
all
everybody
like,
did different.
like I don't know if you're able to like clean it up, generate a table of contents. To me, that sort of is the basis for our then our discussion is the headers that would come up from a table of contents. So. I don't know.
makes sense, yeah. Like, I'm imagining something maybe a little more detailed than would typically be a table of contents, but like maybe just like one level deeper than you would normally go on a table of contents. Right, so like a heading, you know, a chapter, a section heading, and then 2 or 3 bullet points under each section.
For the purposes of the forum, why don't we just keep it simple as here's the
Yeah.
the recommendation is the slides. And then the people that are, you know, in charge of the subcommittees just talk about it and we use the report so that there's not an
I
extra
was going
undue
to say that,
burden.
or as an alternative, take the PowerPoint we did, which was the background, and we listed what we were considering. Well, there is no more consideration. No, it's the background and it's exactly what's on here. And that's it. Or a summary. And then in the back is what each subcommittee, because everybody had already done a lot of their background work by the time we did the last one. So it's not really going to change that much, other than the fact that we met and voted on it. I don't think, so I mean, if we took what was in the last PowerPoint and made a cover page with this, and just had the background where, you know, for governance, for example, well, we considered this, and this is why we didn't, and this is where we are today. You know, making that one recommendation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That way it's already done, really, other than this cover page. It's really the existing.
I guess just the part the reason I think it would be beneficial to have slides with some more information on them is to just, it's like one more way to communicate the same information to the public, right? So, you know, I think about like learning styles, and like some people learn by hearing, some people learn by reading, some, you know, and so like just having like more than one way that we're disseminating that information, you know.
Could I just ask, so are we thinking, as a group, are we thinking presentation we are going to be focusing on what our recommendations are? And then all the rationale and things behind those? Or are we really going to talk about our whole scope of work all over again? Because there's a lot of things we threw out the window, right? So we're going to focus just on the recommendations. Okay.
Yeah, if we started going into scope of work, we're never, we could be going in directions we don't want to go.
Right. So then I think,
And
yeah, okay, good.
I think simple's better here. I mean, the workload, obviously, keep the same slides that we had before as the layout, and then this is our recommendation. And then let the person who's speaking on that topic fill in the rest of the stuff that you can't capture on a slide without making the font so small anyway that there's no purpose to it.
Well, so here's a thought then.
Okay.
We have 6 recommendations. We have 6 of us. Maybe each of us takes one of the recommendations and one slide per recommendation, and just based off of that.
I think the only problem there becomes, well,
I mean, I
I
can.
just challenge because you're
she's,
not. Yeah.
you're not gonna be there, right? Yeah, so.
I'm willing to like send in a recording or something if that's sort of easy and nice, but you know, I'm fine with that.
this is
No,
Oscar.
I guess what I was getting at was we have 2 people on the admin, 6 recommendations. 1 person won't be there, so then you'd have people speaking on topics that they have not been a part of the
Yeah.
subcommittees for,
Right.
which isn't going to set them up to succeed very well.
Mm-hmm.
Is it more important to get through the recommendations and what you did, and then answer questions and concerns, than to try to determine how this plays out among you folks?
I guess to Stu's point, like
Yeah.
that was kind of what I was getting at was here's the recommendation, here's how we got to it, and then at that point it's just what questions do they have of us? You know, because
And you can all jump in and answer the questions.
So, okay, I can get behind that.
So one slide that has all the recommendations on it?
I would say 6 slides. One, each slide has its own recommendation.
But then who's going to speak?
Whoever is assigned to that topic.
By subcommittee?
Yeah, I mean, if Jackie was, or if anybody was speaking on, like, it doesn't matter to me. You did the work. Who cares? Like, I don't want to speak on governance when I didn't.
Why would stop you?
Unless modified by contract.
That's all I'd say. Unless modified
And
by
I was gonna
contract.
do
Any
C part.
questions?
Yes.
You know.
No, I totally get that. I'm just saying, maybe we should just decide, because multiple people were on those subgroups.
Yeah.
And
Right.
people probably want to be prepared. And,
Yeah, 100%.
And so, like, instead of it just getting there that day and being like, okay, which of us is going to talk about this? Like, that's not
Right.
appropriate. So, just to kind of,
Right.
Yeah. So
Make
the
a
first
decision.
two are voting. You did voting last time. You're on the voting. I mean,
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
sort of a no-brainer, right? Michael, you for the first two.
I can handle it.
Sean?
Then the elevating liens and the lot questions are both properties
Mhm.
that were you and me. I won't be there, so I think the question is, does someone else want to take it over? Should Michael do that too? Should I send in some video message? No preference.
If you do it with it holding up a flashlight.
I mean, maybe you want to decide. I would just proceed.
Yeah. I mean, looking ahead, I think maybe Drew will do the governance piece. Yes. The Seaport piece, I guess, could be me or Michael or Colleen.
Colleen, are you still there, and are you going to be in attendance for the public forum?
I'm still here, and I should be attendance on Wednesday for the public forum.
How do you feel about presenting to the public our proposed changes on civilian oversight boards?
So I'm not totally against it. But I understand the background. The problem I have is I don't feel like I have a total. I mean, I guess I could read it over a bunch of times between now and then. I don't have such a handle. Jackie, are you sure you shouldn't do this after you crafted this new recommendation, which we all voted in favor of today? I feel like you might have a better handle on it.
Yeah.
Than I will just coming into that part. You know what I mean?
That's valid.
Yeah, I hear that for sure. So then I guess my instinct is then maybe Rebecca can do the properties piece if she feels comfortable.
Okay, gotcha.
I mean, I think I'm totally comfortable. Like, I don't think it's going to be very complicated. I can just explain what our recommendation is.
Yeah.
It's when it's open for questions,
I'm
those
happy-
on the
I'm
committee,
happy to
like,
jump
will
in.
have to step
Yeah.
up and answer. But I mean, just to go over what our recommendation is, absolutely.
Okay,
That's good.
great.
The only thing I wanted to make sure, while we had Colleen on the phone, Colleen, you were on governance. I'm not stepping on any toes by doing the presentation, am I? Is it something that you feel comfortable you want to do?
No, go for it, Drew. You're good.
All right, I just don't want to, because,
All right, great.
all right, fine.
So then everyone's responsible for their own slides?
Well, I
the
can-
content of their own slides,
Yeah.
10 bullet points or less?
I mean, I literally just want to include the recommendation on my slides.
If somebody can get me the slides, I can make sure that they're all in the same font.
Yeah, why don't I just send out a blank
You know, I mean,
PowerPoint presentation,
Could you make
we're
that
in the
a little
same
cost?
format,
Yeah.
I'll put
and
your
then
picture on.
it'll just be empty on each of the, the pages, and then everybody can fill it in.
They're
The
out there.
18-year-old.
They're out there.
The 18-year-old.
I mean, I have the last one. I can just take a blank slide and,
Perfect.
great, okay.
Just leave the formatting. What was like, yeah.
Yeah,
And if
I
you
just
have
want to
any
make sure
questions
it's.
on these, we can have a call. Or something.
Yeah, that
It's
would
not
be great.
rocket science. These two know all of it.
Don't
yeah.
start talking me up over here.
Okay.
Write it down.
So I'll just have an ear thing in, and you can be listening. And you can just be like,
Just-
say this.
You just,
I'll be
just
asleep.
tap twice.
That's the thing. Is the time changing. It's already virtual.
Yeah. Great.
And we'll let the people from, that want to make public comments, that they'll be held to 3 minutes.
Or less.
Yes, yeah, we'll do
Or
the same
less.
thing, yeah. Slides to me by end of day Tuesday, 5 p.m.
Okay.
And then are you going to put them all
Yeah,
back together?
yeah.
Okay.
And I'll get them to Jonah.
Okay.
Great. I think that's all.
Motion to,
Yeah, Don't need
Yeah, yeah. I heard a motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
No, I'm not ready.
So next Friday will be a debrief of the public forum
Yes.
and a review of the latest version of the document that you've been working on. Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A discussion of lessons learned. And potentially just like a final vote and approval.
Not arrested by
Whoa,
now.
should we be planning for another long meeting then?
Do we need
I-
more pizza? Is the only question I have.
Can we save this? Then
I'm going home. Whatever.
I actually think it's not going to be 3 hours. I mean, it'll probably be our typical 2, maybe, but, you know, it might even be less than that.
You say you want the same
special
pizza?
permission to be out this late.
I was joking.
Okay. Let's say, let's do seconds on that one.
Yeah. Okay.
That's great.
All
Try
in
again.
favor?
Try again.
Aye.
Thanks,
Aye.
everybody.
Any opposed?
6:17, Madam Chair?
Not bad.
We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Wow, this was